I can invite some people.
Hey Chip, my friend, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. I'm just doing some invites. Give me a sec here.
No problem, man. Take your time.
You know, the interesting thing is, I think when you invite people, that you're inviting them not just to come into the audience, but also up on the panel itself. So,
I jumped right on, man. I'm like, oh, Chip is inviting me, so of course, why
yeah,
not?
it's all good, man. So, and by the way, you know how I normally do my little monologues. You're welcome to stay up, but I'm going to talk for a little bit if it's okay.
Um, that's fine. I haven't seen you for a few days.
Yeah, and last Saturday, every time I do one, I put the day of the weekend. It's been 6 days since I went live last Saturday.
Yeah, yeah.
So, been doing some other work.
Okay.
Busy, busy.
Well, the weather is getting better, so outside
Yeah, I
is
mean,
as well.
it was really hot here a couple days ago where I live. It was like in the almost on 90 degrees, and then today it's back in like the 60s, which feels really good.
Yeah.
But I'm out with the dog per usual, just doing the walk thing. She's trying to chase deer.
Oh, nice, nice. I
So
was trying to go out for a walk, then, procrastinating. Now it's too late, man. No, I don't want to get out. Chip, they say as soon as you start procrastinating, I read it somewhere. I'm not sure if it's right or not. It's a small sign of Alzheimer's. I'm not sure, man. But
yeah, procrastination's a killer, right? It definitely is.
I know. But sometimes you're also tired because of that. You procrastinate. So
Yeah, I mean, it's good to get rest and catch up. But what I found is when I get up early and kind of get going and get momentum, I feel better just in general. And when I
yeah,
get outside, get outside and start doing doesn't have anything special. Just get outside and start doing something. I think that's how
absolutely,
we were wired to be. We kind of got up early, we kind of got on with the day, went and found what we needed to eat, and then we could chill. That's kind of how it's supposed to work.
absolutely. All right, Chip. Let's talk about things then. What's going on in the world. What can
Yeah, let me do my normal intro thing that I like to do, and then we'll
do
bring
it?
up some guests. If you want to stay up, you're welcome to, but I'm
All
just
right,
going to
I'm
keep
going
it.
to mute myself then.
Okay, thank you very much. So happy Sunday, everybody. Nice to see everybody. I haven't been live for about a week. Just took a little time to decompress, think some things over. One of the things I wanted to bring up today was we do a lot of talking about trying to, let's say, rebut people who are pro-Israel and all that kind of stuff. What I want to talk about today is not that, because we've done that over and over again. I think it's pretty clear, especially to more people now, where the truth lies. And while I understand the Israeli point of view, and if I were someone who grew up in Israel or who supports Israel, I might feel the same. So in that way, I have to respect it, but I don't have to agree with it. Remember that most of us, at some point in our lives, we believe what we believe, even right now. So you and I have our beliefs right now. It's based on what we've been able to experience and learn to this point. And as that changes, hopefully so do our views. So I don't really blame people who are pro-Zionist for what they believe, because a lot of times they just that's where their experience has taken them. So rather than get into the back and forth about that, which is not going to change anything, right? I mean, we may be able to reach some people with facts and figures, but it seems to be like most people who are pro-Israel right now are backing up into their corner and supporting their side even more. The fact that the public has become aware of this and is sort of turning on them, college campuses, etc., it's very unnerving. From their point of view, they believe that everyone who's doing that is a clueless person, that they don't get it. Right? I hear that a lot on the lives that I watch. But yeah, people get it. They may not know every detail of the conflict, but one doesn't need to know every detail to emotionally respond to what we're seeing. And we're seeing a normal human and visceral response. Now, a lot of times on these Zionist lives, if you come up as a guest and say, well, hey, what about Sudan or what about Syria? So many more people. Listen, those things deserve their own focus and condemnation where necessary, depending upon who is doing what to whom. But everything is taken separately. And we need to be able to look at one thing at a time and discuss it for the merits of it is. And the what about argument is invalid, because if you're doing something that's wrong, meaning the Israelis, and someone else, let's say in Russia or Syria, is doing something wrong, doesn't make anything right or less wrong. It just makes it a different situation when someone's doing something equally harmful or exploitative. So what I want to talk about today is how is this, what's going to change this? Because I think in the end, that's the point of the awareness, is to get enough political pressure that will hopefully put pressure on the United States and Israel and other supporters to change what they're doing. Ultimately, we all know that the only way there's going to be peace, and I think most people on the Israeli side get this, You can't oppress somebody indefinitely and expect them to behave peacefully. That's just an absurd premise to operate from. Now, what a lot of people have been told is that the Palestinian side is the abject violent party because they just like to harm Jewish people. That's the narrative. We all know that's bullshit because if you look back in the early 1900s or before, both before and after World War I, there were people who were of Jewish descent, of Arab descent, quote unquote, and some of whom were Christians, and there were even Palestinian Jews, like we said. So we know people can coexist. There weren't massive campaigns to exterminate one another back in the 1900s. So we know there can be some sort of existence with the parties. But with the advent of the massive amount of immigration into the region and the justifications from the Zionist point of view, and this total influx of, what I would call supremacist Ashkenazi type of European Jewish people, they feel like they have the right to do whatever the hell they want to do. They even look down on the non-Ashkenazi Jewish people, the Mizrahi Jews, who are from different parts of the, what they call the diaspora, different countries that they immigrated from. They look down on them. They look at them as like the working class. Almost, I guess, how you'd look at how the United States, some people who are idiots look down on people here who are, immigrants from, let's say, Africa or the Caribbean or, India or wherever they come from. They look at them as like the servant class. So it's the superiority mindset that has to shift. Now, the influence that this group of people have been able to garner, both financially and politically, is the problem. Let's face it. Absent that, the behavior would be different. The reason why so many politicians are so adamantly outspoken in favor of Israel is not because they have some love for Israel or some love for the Jewish people. It's because their political survival depends on it. If they don't do that, they get the punishment. So obviously, if things are going to change with respect to Palestinian autonomy and self-determination, that dynamic has to change. Otherwise, the policies that come out of those groups of people won't change. And it's common sense, right? So then the question is, well, how do we change that dynamic? Being aware of that as the problem is the key to this. Not who was there in 1200 BC or all that stuff, because it doesn't matter. We are where we are today. The Israelis are doing what they're doing. The Palestinians are trying to resist and cope with the onslaught. It's tragic. It didn't have to be this way. One group of people pushed their way into a region that they claim from some sort of biblical reference is theirs, and they justify what they've done as if the other party is the interloper, so to speak, that they're the colonizer. I mean, that's some pretty warped logic, but we are where we are, right? It is what it is. So the question is, what is politically practical to change this right now? That's a good question to ask. And again, it all comes back to the same keystone issues. And I always come back to this point. And this goes even deeper than this, by the way, but I'll just, where it's morphed into and evolved to in modern society is the biggest problem. There is a group of people who have this belief that they are entitled to accumulate and hoard as much as they can of private property. And they love the capital system because if you can successfully use money and let's say, creativity, ingenuity, and hard work and organize an enterprise, you can make a lot of money. And that's a good thing about the system for the average person if they're able to do that. But it requires you to behave in a certain way because, in essence, capitalism is exploitative. And not always in a bad way. The prosperity that many of us enjoy today is because of a system that has been exploitative. And yes, the production from those systems is very, very unequally distributed. But it has created more. The pie has gotten bigger. So we can't give it entirely a fault because we do enjoy those benefits. I'm talking to you on a damn cell phone, which I could have never had this system not existed. But, and there's a big but, it's become completely out of control insofar as the way power has been distributed, the moneyed interests are now controlling almost everything. We know that the candidates who come into the Congress aren't able to do much. I have a friend that was in Congress for one term, which is 2 years, and pretty much if you're a good person and you want to do something for the common good, meaning you want to have systems benefit the average worker, benefit society, and not benefit the return on capital, you don't last very long because the capitalist class greases the skids of the party leadership and the campaign committees. And they in turn decide the money that gets raised, where it goes from PACs and other sources that are dark money. And they're not supposed to coordinate. According to the law, they're supposed to be separate. So if you have a political action committee called America First for a Bright Future, some bullshit name, anybody can donate to that. So Chevron and JP Morgan can donate unlimited amounts of sums to this dark money pool. They don't even have to disclose where the money came from. And then they can, quote unquote, wink, wink, not coordinate with a particular campaign or party. But of course they do at cocktail parties. They choose who's going to make it through the system or who's going to get the resources. Now, if you're somebody who bucks the system and pushes for change of policy that's mostly agreed upon by the power structure, what do you think is going to happen to your chances of getting a lot of money for your reelection? Is it going to be good or is it going to be bad? And that's the problem. It's the system, the incentives, and the punishments. And what creates that system is a group of people that I call the power structure, which is the combination of the moneyed class, people who do very well in industry or have inherited money. I mean, these people have wealth beyond your wildest imaginations. And for them, flicking, $10 million, $20 million into a dark money pool, it's nothing. It's like you and I throwing a couple cents out of our, couch cushions. And they get great return on investment. So you have the moneyed class, you have the special interest groups like AIPAC, which we're talking about, groups like the National Rifle Association. There are policies that the United States government has passed and put in place that 70 to 80% of the population disagrees with. However, the policies persist, the laws persist. Why is that? Why would something that 80% of the population wants, let's say reasonable background checks before you purchase something that allows you to do harm, why is that not something that is universally implemented? I think even legitimate, 2A supporters would think that's probably a good thing, because you don't want to have somebody who's mentally unstable to be able to go out and do something that could be harmful to the community, right? That's common sense. Yet, because that is deemed to be something that gets in the way of sales, which, revenue and money and profit is the driving influence, it doesn't go into effect. Therein lies the problem. And that example, you can apply that example to any issue that you want, and it has the same flavor and feel. In other words, the profit motive is put well ahead of the common good. This is not a new thing, but it has exploded to a level that's become obscene. It's absolutely obscene. Now, the good news is that more and more people are starting to see it for what it is. People in the American society have been told for decades, you're either somebody who supports the Democratic Party or you support the Republicans. The Democrats think the Republicans are selfish and greedy and too conservative, and they talk about family values and all this stuff. They're against certain social things that Democrats want to have more liberalized. Republicans think that Democrats are a bunch of liberal fools who don't act within reality, and all they want to do is spend their money and take their money from taxes, and they want to unalive little kids because they want women to have their freedoms. These are the grinding issues that we're told are important. But we're also told that we're the greatest country on earth and that we have the right to use our military to protect freedom and justice around the world, right? That's the story that we get. However, much of what the ugly underbelly of the American empire does, which is part of the three-letter agencies and the covert nature of what our government does, is hidden from public view. You have to go out of your way to learn these things. And even then, some of them aren't even available to be learned about until well after they occur. The money that we spend in taxes and that is printed by the Federal Reserve is being used to fuel these clandestine projects that create abject militarism, death and destruction and suffering around the world. That permanent apparatus of government that does not change from administration to administration is referred to by some as the deep state. So you have people that are unelected, and guess what influences the deep state more than any other group? I'm not going to say it out loud, but I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. So, projection of American military power. And what is that for? Why does the American empire exist in the first place? What does the structure of an empire serve in terms of benefits to whom? Well, it does benefit, us to some extent, with the reserve currency being the US dollar. We get to get goods for a resource that we can print unlimited numbers of, and people accept them, at least for now. Some aren't. But we benefit from that. But if that changes, we're in big trouble, because people aren't going to take those dollars. We're going to have to convert our dollars into something that has our dollars are going to have less value vis-a-vis hard assets. And then we're going to have a hard time getting stuff, which is already starting. We have inflation because of that money printing. So between the central banks, the corporations, And they're kind of tied to these high net worth individuals. Because let's face it, most of the corporations, the shares of ownership of these publicly traded companies are hoarded and owned in vast majority by this very small subset of American wealthy people and other international, wealthy people. These people do not have allegiances to a particular country. They may be from America, they may be from the UK, they may be from India, but they look at the landscape of the international economic and political system as basically like it's like a mosquito looking for a target to land on and kind of withdraw what they can. And their job is to extract and exploit regardless of impact. That's what gets these people rich. That's why I call them the sociopathic class, because they seem to care little or none who they hurt, how much labor they exploit, how much pollution they leave behind. It doesn't matter to them how much material they rip out of the earth and destroy the ecosystems. They just don't give a shit. Or they may give a shit, but their first allegiance is so strong that they just can't bring themselves to shift gears. So all of that money that they garner from being such a sociopathic accumulator and exploiter allows them to manipulate what otherwise should be a system that functions towards the civic good. So that's where we are. So it's a humongous problem. Now, how does the Israel-Palestine issue fit into this? The same moneyed interests are filled with people from the background that I described earlier, who also happen to have a great allegiance because of their background, their heritage, their family, to the nation state of Israel. They are pro-Israel, pro-Zionist. Not everybody, but many, or even I would say most. That causes a huge problem because for us Americans, we live in the American border, we have the American system. We need to have finding ways to craft policies that benefit the community of Americans. And if you're not from America, fill in the blank for your government. It's all the same forces. And corruption is real. It's a real thing in many governments. It's especially bad in the United States, though, because we don't even call it corruption. We call it campaign donations, campaign finance. But it's basically legalized bribery. It's just done out in the open. This is how brash they've become. They make money as speech, and they make corporations have personhood, and then they create unlimited money that can go into these dark money pools and support candidates, and they call that a legal system. That's not legal. That's legalized bribery, but bribery should be illegal. You shouldn't be able to use your money to get somebody to make a decision on your behalf. That's called bribery. If you send money to a judge and you're someone who's up against a bunch of criminal charges and it's found out, that's called bribery. The judge goes to jail and you get an additional offense for committing bribery. But in the United States, they've legalized it. It's out in the open now, and people can't seem to do anything about it. So what the hell do we do about this? Everything we're seeing in the world, including the inability to change the dynamics in the Israel-Palestine debacle, massacre, call it what you want, is because of these same factors. Everything is a symptom of these core problems. So the only way that's ever going to address not only the power dynamic that supports the perpetuation of these injustices in Palestine, but all the other injustices that accompany the power system, the permanent state, and these wealthy interest and special interest groups that have a stranglehold over all aspects of American and usually British and other Western portions of life, plus the media system. The media system is highly controlled by members of this same class. They have editorial control. There's like 6 companies that control all the news. And all you have to do is get 6 editors on board, and most of the information and most of the employees who work in the space are controlled by the same sort of common interested individuals. That's not a healthy thing. That means that a very small subset of people can control the landscape of information as we're seeing. So obviously for decades, most Americans haven't gotten much information, myself included, of what's really happening on the ground. We get a very, very incomplete and usually slanted view of this issue. That goes for everything. I talked about the clandestine stuff earlier. Okay, so how in the world, given the fact that everyone's conditioned in the United States or even in Britain, that it's Labor versus Tories or Democrats versus Republicans, it's this 2-party system that's been set up as if it's the only way to go. It's become the default way of trying to do things. And everyone's then conditioned within that 2-party system to think that, hey, if we can just get the right people to replace the bad people, somehow things will get better, right? That's the conditioning that George Carlin talked about. The conditioning that says that people have choice, that we're involved in a democratic process, that we have the ability to change things through representative democracy. Well, if you're a moneyed interest person, what would you do if you wanted to control the process? Well, you would look at the first candidate And then you look at the second candidate, you know one of the two is going to win because the third parties rarely, if ever, win, especially at the federal level. So all you have to do is get to that person. Now, sometimes money does the job. Other people are less pliable to money, even though the system punishes them for that. And therefore, what do? You have the Epstein Island, etc., the honeypot traps that get people in compromising situations. They have the goods on you, and now they can use that to enforce their policies. This is the sickness and the rot that infects the U.S. political system and even the whole Western system. Thanks for doing the gardening. Beautiful stuff. I'm in a community garden. So if people are not going to acknowledge this fundamental problem at the center of this, it's like if you have an autoimmune problem and you're having skin rashes and you're putting skin cream on your arm to make it better, that's dealing with the symptom of the problem. If we're going to go out and protest and yell at the government about what's happening in Palestine, and rightly so, everything is and, it's not this or that. But that's not going to change anything. That's dealing with the symptom of the problem. We're putting on skin cream and we're yelling at people back and forth as to why one version of why Nivea or Neutrogena, which one's the better one to put on the arm. We're not focused on the core problem. We have to stop the back and forth bickering. We have to stop buying into the false two-party system. It's a single party that has been co-opted by the wealthy class and the other portions of the power structure. We're going to have to find a way to overcome the core problem. Now, it's an incredibly difficult situation because that whole thing has been put together like a beautiful puzzle by those people for many decades. So whenever you're unwinding a problem, if you have a ball of yarn that's wound up and you want to unwind it, right? You have to start unwinding it with the last thing that was put on. You have to start the unwinding process. What's the last chapter of this bullshit? The money, Citizens United. That's the Supreme Court case that decided that money was free speech, unlimited money from corporations. That has to be undone. So how do we undo constitutional cases in the United States? We have to pass what's called a constitutional amendment. Now, that sounds great. We'll just change the Constitution, right, to change it. Well, not so fast. There are only two ways in the United States system to change the Constitution. The first one is through Congress. You have to get a 2/3 vote of both houses of Congress, the House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate. And then the president, of course, has to sign it into law. And then it becomes part of the Constitution, as long as it doesn't get overturned by the Supreme Court in terms of challenges. So that's what, now we know the Congress is bought off. That is the problem. How is that measure going to make it to the Congress? It's never going to go through, right? No matter how many people we elect on the periphery that try to navigate this system, the core system is going to remain, right? We know that most candidates are going to lose because they don't get the money or they get punished. So any well-meaning candidate is going to get blocked. So then what do? Well, the other way to do it is to go to the state houses. The framers of the Constitution wanted to find a way that if this was the problem, if Congress was, bought off or otherwise corrupt, that the governors and the various state legislatures could be used as a vehicle to change. The problem is those same moneyed interests have figured out how to play the same game, but at the state level, to whatever degree they can. So now you have a block. You have a physical wall within Congress to change the Constitution. You have a physical wall that's in front of you to change the state level to the Constitution. So what are your options? It is completely sewn up, a nice little bow on top. And people who are benefiting from the status quo are loving it because they're just milking profits and paying less taxes than ever, offshoring corporations. Meanwhile, the country is burning. We're having to print money to pay our bills. Inflation is running out of control, and the average person is getting squeezed. We have for-profit healthcare. We have for-profit prisons. Now, I'm not trying to say that America's all bad because let's be straight. I'm walking. No one's telling me what to do. I'm walking on a Sunday, so I have freedom, which is wonderful. I have basic resources, which is amazing, more than most do. So we can't be ingrateful critics. We have to be very thankful for what the results have been. But if you follow the trajectory of where this likely goes, end stage empire, end stage capitalism, it is not going to be good for the average person. If you believe that this is going to somehow get better and that your kids or grandkids are going to have a better life, you are dreaming. That ship has sailed. And remember, the big boom period was after World War II. The United States was the victor. There was no adversaries. The dollar was supreme after Bretton Woods, and it was off to the races. And we had a huge development from about 1946 until about 2002, 2001. was the peak of the United States economy and system. Because now it's all been financialized. Let's face it, most of the growth that's happened since then in the markets have been all financialization. You have derivatives, buybacks, and other bullshit that's driven the market higher. It's not actual growth. We have tech companies now. We don't have real, all the basic building blocks of society have been outsourced to other countries, which is why they're doing so well. And it was all towards corporate profits. So what the hell can we do? What the hell can anyone do about this? Well, we can throw up our arms and take whatever comes down the pike, which is more like what's happening right now. We can continue to buy into this two-party, concept where we basically go to the polls and we're told a bunch of bullshit by these people, and they may mean it at the time, but then they get into the actual mud pit of Congress or the Senate, and they realize very quickly what's up. These same walls that we're describing, they realize very quickly what those obstacles are, and they may bitch about it in public. They may talk to it just to kind of put cover for their political face, but behind closed doors, they have to cooperate. A great example of that is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. We were told that she was this real up-and-comer, this mover and shaker that was going to change things up. She fell right in line with the party, the Democratic Party. It's the same shit over and over and over again. So the question is, one definition of insanity is if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, but you expect a different result, how can you possibly be somebody who has any logic? That's crazy. So for example, if you have a brick wall, we've all heard the story of the big bad wolf. And so if you have a pebble and you're tossing it at a brick wall and you're expecting that wall to tumble, that's the equivalent of voting in the two-party system, having faith that somehow the representatives that go in will somehow change that. That brick wall is not going to fall by throwing pebbles at it. Even if you had 1,000 people throwing pebbles at it, it's not going to make a difference. A brick wall has to come down with something more powerful, something with more force, more impact. Now, what might that be? Well, we know from examples within the economy that if workers, and I talk about this a lot, so if you heard this before, I apologize, but some of you may have not. So if you're a worker and you're inside of a company and you're not happy with the company's making record profits and they're not giving you a raise, or they're cutting back on your vacation to make more money for the corporate shareholders, you're like, this is effed up. This is not right. This is not fair. Something's got to change. So you go into your boss's office as an individual, or maybe a few of you come into your supervisor and say, hey, we just want to let you know, we know the company's kicking ass and doing great. It would be very nice if we could, see a little bit of a little piece of the action. That'd be great. We're making it happen. We're working overtime and doing X, Y, and Z, all contributing. Why is it all the money's going to the shareholders and none of it's coming back to us? And the supervisor says, okay, I'll make a note of it. And he goes to a meeting and he mentions it to the chain of command, and they say, okay, we'll make a note of that. And they just ignore you. That's what happened. They ignore your requests, your polite requests, or even your strong demands. They'll probably fire you as an individual if you start stomping your feet. You're a nuisance, basically. Hey, come on, shut it. Smells a deer. So if you can't get polite demands met or even strong demands met, you have to figure out another plan. Well, what are the resources that workers have in a company? Individually or in small groups, they have very little power, but if you put enough together and organize, you now have strength in numbers. It's like the old, fable about a couple of sticks and the father breaks them in front of his kids. And 2 sticks together can break, 3 sticks can break. Then he gathers 12 to 15 sticks and he tries to break them and he can't. It's that idea. Together with the power of numbers, you can threaten towards your demands, and the demands need to be reasonable, right? You can't say I want all the profits, but as long as the demands are reasonable and you want a small incremental raise or whatever your bargaining position is, you work that out. So you organize and you threaten to withhold your labor, which the company requires and depends on for the activities of profitability to continue. In other words, no labor, no production, no services. If all the UPS drivers go on strike, there's no UPS trucks going anywhere. People aren't getting their packages. So if you're a customer of UPS and they go on strike, who are you going to call for a package delivery? You're going to call UPS and wait 6 weeks for the strike? You're going to call FedEx. And losing a customer to another major competitor is devastating, because getting customers, loyal customers, is the goal of business. So you're not going to risk, as the management, something that drastic happening, not to mention the short-term loss of profits just from the interruption to the business cycle. So it is something that is interrupted. It's not a pebble, it's a sledgehammer, or it's a bulldozer, one of those crazy machines the Israelis use. And with that thing sitting at the ready to smack that wall, a lot of times they'll go, okay, I'll tell you what, let's do this. And then business continues with a much different framework, right? Now imagine that example, but instead of the company's management or the shareholders or board of directors being the ones that are being petitioned or threatened or whatever, it's all nonviolent. Imagine that same power structure that I mentioned earlier, the national security state, the media apparatus, the wealthy class, the special interest groups, the Citizens United, the money system. What if the demands of the strike were not better pay and better wages, but a fundamental transformation of some of these key variables in a reasonable amount of time that create more equitable outcomes and have a better outcome for society in general, the common good, not the good of just the ownership class. In other words, throw the people a damn bone is what I like to say. Because they're not throwing anybody a bone right now. They're taking it all and they're just laughing while we bicker. And the kids are fighting, can't focus on mom and dad. So, but there's more to it. So here's an example. Theoretically, I'm not encouraging this, but let's say that you and I went to Congress and we testified and said, hey, this stuff needs to change. They basically laugh us out of the room, right? That's the management. They're the middle level management. The board of directors are the rich assholes and all the people that run things. And they just laugh it off. So then, if we organized, 20, 30, 50 million people, and it wouldn't be one person or one organization, it would be distributed. So you would have, every community would have 150, 200 different people that had little groups, almost like cells, if you will. I know that sounds kind of terroristic. But let's say you had 15 to 20 people in your circle of concern and you could get them organized. That's all you got to do. And then let somebody else do their 15, et cetera. Different people would emerge. But you start to make people aware. You have to have awareness, consciousness of these very issues, where the real power dynamics lie and what the real path to change is. So that's part of it. Now, what do we have other than our labor? We have our money. Every time you and I do anything every day, if you spend any money, use a credit card, use cash, you're making a decision. You're directing your power. Individually, there's very little power. We as an individual, let's say you have 100 grand saved up or whatever. You think you're going to compete with BlackRock, who has $1.3 trillion under management? It's a joke. But if you and your neighbors and their neighbors and in every community across the country put together their resources, that's way more than $1 trillion. That can be used as a tool as well. So by not buying things other than absolute essentials, you can essentially put your dollars on strike, because everything's corporate now, right? I mean, how many places do you go buy stuff that's not chain oriented? Almost never. All those companies, the money that flows through them don't go back to your community. They go to Wall Street. They go to the investor class. They go to the same group of pricks that are sitting on a yacht or flying around in a private jet or sitting in their vacation home on Nantucket, laughing, sipping champagne, and wondering why other idiots don't do what they're doing, which is you and me. It's because you and I have a conscience. Most working people don't want to exploit other working people. They don't want to destroy the environment. They don't want to take advantage of others for their gain. But again, getting back to the idea behind the Ashkenazis, that's their mindset. They want to find a way to take more for them. The cost may be so fucking big. It's that exploitative, arrogant, sort of self-serving mindset, that mindset of superiority and entitlement, that is the rot behind all these things. That mindset has to go too. So what else do we have? We got our buying power. We can not buy shit. That would put a really big hurting. It'd be like a massive, not just a boycott on Starbucks or McDonald's, a boycott on everything under the sun, except for the very food you need and clothes to cover your kids' bodies. That's it. That's it. Everything else has to go on pause. If it means you have to go live with your cousin or combine families in multiple houses, whatever you got to do, you do it for the bigger purpose. That's it. No bullshit, no excuses, no greed. Because if you want your kids to have a better life, you got to act like it. Words are empty, actions have meaning. Without the actions in the organization, none of this will work. It's like saying to the union leader, hey, I'd really like to do that, but I don't want to spend the extra $30 a week out of my check, so I'm not going to be a part of it. Then nobody gets any benefits. Right? Now, who wants to have money taken out of their check? I don't. But again, the end result justifies the short-term sacrifice. That's the idea behind these campaigns. Now, what else? We have physical bodies. If you look back at prior movements, including what we're seeing right now, people literally put their bodies on the line. These student protesters are putting their bodies in these encampments, and they're putting themselves at risk of arrest, suspension, expulsion, loss of scholarship money, job losses in the future because these Israelis like to make these lists up of people who are anti-Israel, and therefore they won't hire you, or they try to get people to blackball you. That's risk. It all involves risk. So I understand that most people probably don't want to take these risks. I can't blame them. Like I said, life is not horrible right now, but people will normally take these risks when they see less hope for the things that we're looking at right now. And it's understandable that people are not going to leave that lane of comfort until they feel enough emotional discomfort that the idea of the sacrifice is less bothersome than the idea of continuation of what they're experiencing. If that makes sense. Okay? Now, everything has to be at scale. If you go to the wall with those, 150, 200 people and you got a bunch of pebbles, the wall doesn't come down. But if you have 150,000 people with sledgehammers on the wall or some of that heavy equipment, that wall's going to come down. It has to be done at scale, so it has significant impact. So with our physical bodies, just as the protesters are occupying college squares, which is obviously not very disruptive, people say it is, but what's it really affecting? But if literally 20 million Americans who are fed up with this bullshit, who can't take it anymore, who said, you know what, fuck it. If I go to jail, I go to jail. If I get killed, I get killed. We got to do the right thing for the future of our country. You go out into the streets, you go out to the bridges, you go to the highways, you go to the ports, airport, seaport, whatever. You disrupt. Now, all this stuff is illegal, by the way. A general strike is illegal. And having a non-approved protest, or you're physically obstructing vehicular movement or whatever, that's illegal, right? It's against the law. So you're breaking the law. It's called civil disobedience, non-violent civil disobedience. Now, I'm not recommending anybody do this. I'm just letting you all know, if there were to be a playbook that could overcome the challenges that have been put in place, the walls that have been drawn, something to this effect is going to have to happen, because you can't throw pebbles at a wall and expect it to come down. It's not going to come. Voting for a Republican or a Democrat every 2 to 4 years is like tossing sand at the wall. You're just wasting your fucking time. And the people who stand on the other side of that wall are laughing while you sort of throw sand or pebbles, like these fucking idiots. And meanwhile, they gather more and more stuff from your side to put on their side of the wall. And you're wondering, what the hell, why is this happening? So there's that. Now, you also have to have, just like when you're organizing a strike within a company, you have to have a specific and attainable set of demands. Realistic, specific, attainable, with a timetable, right? They call that SMART: specific, measurable, attainable, something in time bound. And that has to be agreed upon. There's no one agreement, but I would think some of the things that people would want, I think would make sense, is we want to change the inequality of income based on the system. This productivity is absolutely absurd, and yet so little of it goes to the vast majority. So that needs to change. And that could come through tax policy. It come through changing the way corporations work. There's a lot of ways to make it happen. Those are details. Militarism. We have to stop spending these vast sums, these obscene levels of money on war and armaments. It's making money for a bunch of sick MFers who don't care who gets killed as long as they make a profit. What kind of sick, sadistic human being would want to profit off of the combat and death of others? Think about that for a second. What kind of sick person would you want to go hang out with? That person, or like, hey, I just made $6 million. You're like, oh, how'd you do that? Oh, I sold a bunch of bombs to Israel and they dropped them on these Palestinians. It was no big deal because who cares? Because I'm making money. You're like, what a sociopathic. Well, you get the idea. So these things, now, by the way, I do not believe that most Americans are going to become conscious of the very foundational issues we're talking about. Nor, even if they were to be, if everybody woke up tomorrow morning and had heard exactly what's being said today and they all agreed with it, right? Let's just say they're like, okay, I get it. Getting people to do something on anything in life, whether even just to click a button to support an email or signature campaign on the internet, is not easy. So to get somebody to consider the idea of organizing, which takes effort, calling and talking to people to inform them and get them all riled up, that takes effort. Getting them to consider risks to their personal freedom, their financial future, having to endure whatever hardships accompany that, or just the interim when they have to kind of help each other out through the process like the employees do during a strike. But the union has a fund. Remember that the union has that money they take out of your check, and they create a fund. It's like a backstop for those who are in desperate circumstances while they ride out this transition. And by the way, not every strike works, right? Let's face it. Some strikes happen, and like Walmart, for example, if they get word that groups want to unionize, they will shut down the entire store. That's not striking. That's just the conversation of getting together to provide more power in numbers. So some companies just absolutely just won't tolerate any sort of organization. I would imagine that our establishment feels very similarly based on what we're seeing happening right now. You know, they broke up the Occupy Wall Street protests. They're breaking up Black Lives Matters protests. They're breaking up the anti-Israel protests. This is what they do. They use force to suppress dissent. They use force to suppress dissent. So the violence doesn't come from the protesters or those committing civil nonviolent disobedience. It comes from the state, the police force, the military, the government, in repressing as a tool of the oligarchy of the establishment, repressing the dissent. We've seen this throughout history. So it's to be expected. And in fact, I would imagine over time, we're going to see many more control mechanisms come to place that's going to make even the mere possibility of this happening more difficult. I'm not going to get into that right now. So let's get back to the average Joe, so to speak. So let's say you're the average Joe. You finally understand why you're getting fucked mercilessly, why you're having to spend more money on groceries, and why it's not going to get better, and your kids' lives are going to suck. And this is not good. This system need not be this way. It's out of kilter. It's like a boat with all the weight on the top, and it's about to capsize. So obviously that needs to change. You got to get the weight off the top. You got to restabilize the boat. Well, obviously that's where the wall is. There's a wall on the mast. You can't get to the top to redistribute the weight. So how are you going to get how's everybody going to be motivated to do this stuff, right? How are you going to get somebody to get it, right? Now, right now, like I said, it's hard to get people to even get off their couch. People are feeling tired, overworked, depressed. You know, it's a sad set of circumstances. There are people that have identified all of this. None of this is coming from my head. This is me regurgitating stuff that I've read from others that makes sense. Most people are going to just continue to go along. Even in the Revolutionary War, remember when the U.S., the colonists fought the British? Most colonists didn't participate initially. They thought, oh, it's not. Somebody in the comments here said, that's a waste of time. You're just going to throw your life away for nothing. That's the initial conversation that happens. People doubt the efficacy. Oh, it's not going to work. And by the way, they may be right. But I will guarantee you one thing, and this is irrefutable. If the population chooses, for whatever reason, because of fear, because of ignorance, because of apathy, then whatever happens is on them. People in our lives individually and collectively as a society, I get what I envision and I affirm and I work towards. So I have nobody to blame except myself with things I don't do, because again, I had a chance to reshape my thinking and my actions in a way that was accordingly in alignment with the things that I think are important to accomplish. Now, you may ask me, well, okay, Mr. Studley, what are you doing about all this? Like I said before, I'm not someone who can promote this. If I promote this and start organizing this, I'm going to get picked up and go to jail. It's very simple. I'm also just a very small fish. Let's be fair. But there are people out there who, if they started doing this publicly, they would be arrested and incarcerated in, espionage or sedition or whatever you want to call it. I'm not for the overthrow of the U.S. government at all. I'm for changing policies and power structures to serve the common good. That's what I'm for. Now, I don't know what the means are going to be to get there. That is not important to me. And some of these means hopefully don't have to occur. I think everybody here would like to be able to vote our way out of this. That'd be great, right? You go to vote, things get better. Hey, everybody, humming along, skipping down the road, having a good old time, right? But I hear people talking about that on TikTok all the time. I've been sitting on lives. This last week, what I did was I sat and listened on a lot of lives. And the overwhelming consensus that I hear in these left-right debates, Trump lovers, Trump haters, Biden, blah, blah, blah. Nobody seems to like Biden, but they just can't bring themselves to vote for Trump if they're anti-Trump. But either way, they still believe in the system, and their idea is third party. One guy on one of these lives was saying, I'm sorry I'm ignoring comments, I'm just doing stream of consciousness here. He said that we have to get what is it called, libertarian candidates into office because they're going to change everything. And my argument was to him, and again, I try not to attack people. I try to put out statements against the quote unquote the argument. And I said, I can see how one makes that argument. I said, how would you respond to the possible scenario that if that was successful for the next 3 or 4 election cycles, but none of the major power forces shift because of those replacements, what would you then recommend? He's like, well, it's going to work, man, because people like you and me, we know what's going on. We want things to be better, so we're going to make it happen. We're going to overcome these forces. I'm like, well, how? How's it going to happen? Play it out in your mind. Okay, let's say this election cycle, we turn over 10% of the Congress becomes people that we think are supportive of these policies, and they're going to try to push for them. Well, what do you think is going to happen to those people as they try to work through the power structure we've talked about? Are they going to get money for re-election? Are they going to have an impact? They might have a voice. And by the way, I support getting people into office either way because you get more of an amplification of voices and you get more positive awareness in society. That's not a bad thing. It's not like voting has no worth, but it doesn't have enough impact. It is a pebble. We need sledgehammers. We need those machines, those heavy equipment machines that knock down walls. It's about to start raining. I got to go. Oh shit, I'm going to get slammed by rain here. Let me put my hood on. All right, dog, here we go. Let me get under a tree here. Okay. Yep, the weather report called for rain, and here it is. It's just a shower, though. All right, Ruby, come here, baby. Come here. So the overwhelming consensus of all this, let me take this silly hood off, is that the status quo is going to work out somehow, just by hope. It's like saying, this is the example I'll give you, and if you're somebody who's overweight, please don't get offended. I'm not picking on you because of that issue. I'm saying it because it's a fairly well-known example. Let's say, for example, you say to yourself, gosh, I really want to lose weight this year. I really hope I lose weight. That's how you go into it. Now, what do you think is going to happen when somebody says, now, if somebody else says to themselves, okay, I'm going to change what I'm eating. I'm going to work with a doctor. I'm going to have a trainer. I'm going to go to the gym 3 times a week. I'm going to commit to it. And if I don't do it, I'm not going to have the ability to, I'll cancel my net, whatever it is. You kind of give yourself some sort of accountability structure. I'm going to work with my friend John, who's doing the same. Which person do you think has a more likely sense of losing weight? Number 1, the guy who says he hopes, or number 2, the guy who sets a specific plan and works on it? So 1 or 2, who has the better chance of losing weight? Now, the people that are voting for Biden or voting for Trump or voting for the third party, okay, they're hoping that act will get them to the desired goal. They're hoping. But clearly, we've seen for decades, this is the only example you need, okay? And I lived through this. Believe it or not, I was even, thinking that this might have some validity to it. Barack Obama, if you watch his campaign, go back and listen to some of his campaign speeches. He made it seem like all these major sweeping changes were coming to the country. Change is coming to the United States of America. That was his tagline. Change is coming. Change is coming. So there was a huge groundswell of support for this young, sort of energetic, very, articulate man who happened to be a man of color, at least half black. And he was a real inspiration to many that there were going to be some great transitions in the way systems work. Guess what changed? Absolutely nothing. In fact, things got worse. Under Obama, we had a huge financial crisis just as he was coming into power. And what did he do? He recapitalized the banks at the expense of you and I. It went on our credit card, our debt. And he didn't just give them money so they could survive. They got all of the money back that they lost, and they got bonuses. And they got their bonuses, which was, billions of dollars of government money that went on our credit card that you, me, and our kids get to pay off, at least the interest. So you can say, well, Obama tried, but he just couldn't. Bullshit. Obama is a creature of the establishment. He is a Manchurian type of candidate. And if you can't see it, I feel badly for you. He is as much a part of the same machine that I've laid out today as anybody. In fact, I think he's worse because he talks out of one side of his mouth saying he cares about A, B, and C, and yet he does D, E, and F behind closed doors to fuck people. That's the bottom line. If you don't believe that, never believe what somebody says, believe what they do. Believe what did Obama do? He recapitalized the banks at our expense, right? Horrible thing to do. He should have let all those institutions fail. We would have survived it. It would have been a difficult period, But big banks who make bad risks and expect to be bailed out, they get all the profits when they win. We pay all the money back when they lose. That's not a system that we should be a part of. That's unfair. And we don't get bailed out if our businesses fail. If we have a small business or we can't pay our mortgage, we don't get a government check. Obama was the largest bomber from drones of any president in U.S. history. He dropped more bombs on innocent people all around the world than anybody ever in the history of the country. He was a complete homicidal war criminal maniac. Strong words, right? Every U.S. president has approved war crimes, every single one. And Obama said as his first act in office, he would codify into law Roe v. Wade, meaning that women would have a permanent right at a federal level to have access to reproductive health care, call it what you want. First day in office, he said it's not a priority. Not a priority of mine. So he got a lot of women to vote for him based on that promise, which he broke immediately. Now, under Obama, something called the Affordable Care Act did pass, barely. But it doesn't have a public option, and it still involves insurance companies, and all the money goes to the insurance companies. The less expensive policies that exist, they are subsidized by our tax dollars, meaning that the insurance companies still get the same amount of money or more, but it goes on our credit card. So yes, it does benefit the average citizen to have access to something, but then again, most of these policies suck. And then the insurance companies go to bed trying to fight everything under the sun. Don't approve this, don't approve that. We're caught in a very bad system where all the money is being spent by you and I on a credit card that goes to the wealthy class. They're getting 20, 15, 20, $30 million salaries, huge stock options, vacation homes, yachts, private private jets, the whole 9 yards. We're getting played. We're getting played. So we can keep getting played, which seems to be the trajectory we're on. We can fight back and forth and say, I'm going to vote for this person. No, you're an idiot. Vote. Guys, gals, women, kids, that is not the way to get the job done. It's never going to work. It's never going to work. I will never be convinced that we can vote our way out of this. I wish we could. How nice would it be that if we could go through a couple election cycles and just kind of clean the slate and have a great system? But let me use the example of the marionettes. I love this example. And see if you can identify with this. So we all know what marionettes are. If you don't, it's a little stage production with a bunch of sort of artificial dolls that are smaller dolls, and they're dressed up like the characters of a normal play. They're just not human beings. And there's these wires that come from the dolls up to a little like four-sided wooden handle, like a little cross that holds the wires. And the people that are running the production hold the marionettes in place by using these like guide wires. And they speak themselves. They speak the character parts behind the screen. So they're like the Wizard of Oz. They're the people really in charge of the production. Not the dolls on the stage are the individuals who appear to be in front of you, the voices of which come from elsewhere. And if you tie that to the power structure that I described, it's very similar. That entire structure of power controls that cross with the wires coming down. The dolls are irrelevant. Now, you can take a doll off that has a pink dress on and put a doll in with a blue dress and run the same play. Now, is it nice to have a doll in there with a blue dress if you prefer the color blue? Yeah, of course. But is it going to change the play? Nope. Because the same people running the production that are behind the stage and holding those wires are shifting them to whatever aims they may have. It's their play. It's their production. So how in the world can you look at a marionette stage if you're watching this and going, I'll tell you what, I want to change how the play goes. I'm going to run up really quickly and change one of the dolls and go back to my seat. And then you watch the play and it's the same damn play you saw last week. The same play, and you're like, well, damn. So then you go up and change the dress to another one. Same exact outcome. You're like, what the fuck? And then you realize that the same people have nothing to do on the stage. They're inanimate objects. They're just placeholders. Those are the representatives of government. They are pawns of the oligarchy and the establishment. So if you can't see that, then you're not seeing through the facade. It's a very good game they've set up where it makes people think that they have a role in shaping what happens in society. We don't. We don't. We just don't have that. Now, that's not to say that there's no hope for the future. It's just that if you're the person that wants to lose weight and you're going to do the same shit you've been doing for the last 10 years, eating the same foods, doing the same level of movement, what are the chances are that things are just going to magically change all of a sudden with no change in action? Zero. Zero. So you can decide, if you don't mind being overweight and gaining another 15 pounds this year, you can decide to keep doing that, but eventually you're going to have a heart attack and die, or get a stroke or diabetes or whatever the hell is going to happen, right? Or you can face the music. We can face the music and say, okay, it's not going to be easy. I got to get up early. I got to do this before I go to work. I got to change what I eat. I'm going to spend more time shopping. I got to cook some shit. Is that a pain in the ass? Yeah. It's a total pain in the ass. Does it suck because you can't have the same enjoyment of the food? Yeah, it sucks. But if you want to have a better long-term outcome, if we want a better long-term outcome, we're going to have to eat that pain. It's not, there's no way to avoid it. Everybody wants someone else to come in and be the savior. They want the Obama. Hey, Obama's going to come in and make life better for all of us. We're just going to elect this guy and boom. It's not going to happen. That's a fantasy. So, I'm getting fucking wet as hell here too, but it's really coming down. I'm going to get to a better spot here. Oops. Wow. I did not see this storm coming. Anyway, so now I've spoken a lot today. I've laid a lot out. I've talked about this a lot before, but if you disagree with this and you have a different path to making improvements so that the systems, the power structures, stop going to war, stop printing money, stop bailing out the rich, stop enriching the oligarchy at the expense of the public, make healthcare free for all, or at least make it societal based, no more private prisons, no more money in politics. If you have a better path to achieve these things, let's talk about it. Come on up and talk about it. I would love it if somebody would correct me and tell me the right path, because that's all I care about is the outcomes. I want to see people do better. I think my camera's starting to get wet here. Just give me a second. Yeah, well, I might have to just go in the rain and eat it. So if you want to request and come up and share your views on this subject, please do. Getting back to Israel-Palestine, the same set of forces that are holding those marionettes, they're Zionists. Most of those wires coming down on those dolls are Zionist-influenced wires. They want to run the play the way they want to run the play. One of those wires is Israel-Palestine. And changing the doll at the bottom is not going to change the wire that the person's holding who supports the policies that are continuing to make the Palestinians suffer, that are blocking their ability to have an autonomous future. And they're going to continue to try to dispossess them of land, to try to unalive them, and take over more and more of that land as they cleanse it to their aims. That's it. That if you can't see that, you're not seeing the big picture. No amount of TikTok lives, arguing back and forth, trying to convince people is going to change anything. We have a pro-Israeli media. We have a pro-Israeli economic system. We have a pro-Israeli government. And because of the weapons and the money and the political backing through institutions like the United Nations, and I don't know if you saw this, but a group of I think 18 U.S. senators, when the International Criminal Court threatened to issue arrest warrants for Netanyahu and staff. Hold on, Ruby, hold on. They sent a letter threatening them, saying that any attack on Israeli leadership is an attack on the sovereignty of the United States, and that they will be subject to sanctions, and that they and their families, they and their families would not be allowed to travel to the United States. They'd be barred permanently. Now imagine that for a second. And by the way, there's a guy named DeMarvin Gray who says blah, blah, blah. So DeMarvin, I would appreciate it if I'm doing the blah, 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 come on up and give me the straight skinny. Give me the truth, my friend. Because I love to learn, and if something is more effective than the things we're talking about, I want to hear it. So it's easy to be a critic, but if you have a different path that you think needs to take its course, let's talk about it. So again, I know that's a very somber, sobering reality, especially for Palestinians, because they so desperately deserve a better set of outcomes than the ones they've experienced. They don't deserve to have their society collectively punished by a maniacal, barbaric, cruel, pro-Zionist, ethnic cleansing-oriented regime. And I'm not lumping all Israelis or all Israel supporters in that bucket, by the way. They're not all bad. Many don't like the occupation. Many want peace. They want the hostages returned. They hate the Netanyahu. I mean, and there's all sorts of people around the world, one of which is my friend, a guy who works with Jewish Voices for Peace. There are a lot of Jewish people that don't look at the state of Israel or the Zionist project as a part of their Jewish identity. But most do, unfortunately. Okay, we have two people that want to come up. Let me see if I can get the water off my screen. It's Natrium and Ohad. So let's bring up Natrium first, and we'll bring up Ohad second. If you can come up.
No, I just wanted to tell you the Argentina Patagonia here in the south is very, very desert when it comes to people. There is absolutely no one. So if you have the mean, or if there is some kind of organization that has the mean to keep these Palestinian people safe, you can absolutely relocate it into Argentina, because Argentina has no population whatsoever. It is a very unpopulated country, especially in the Patagonia.
Okay, make sure I understand you. You're saying that it's a potential outlet for refugees from Gaza or elsewhere in the Palestinian territory or the occupied territories is Argentina. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Do you
Yes.
suggest?
It
Do you
will be
suggest
great.
that?
It will
Do
be
you
great.
suggest that? Hold on. Why do you make that statement? What is your motivation? Do you think the Palestinians should leave the territory?
No. I did not say that. But if it comes to that, if and I hope not, I really hope not. But if in any case come to that, I think Argentina, my country, is the best the best way to go.
Now, what about people who support Zionism and the way that they've moved in and sort of displaced people that had been living there in relative peace for a long time? Why is it that they, instead of occupying Palestine, should not shift and immigrate to Argentina?
Well, because they are the one attacking, and they are the one that have the bigger guns. There's not much discussed about that. I mean, this is not a moral stuff. This is not about supporting Israel or anything like that. No, you're seeing it in the wrong way. This is a reality, a horrible reality. And for example,
have you heard of Ghassan Kanafani? You ever heard him talk before? Have you ever heard of the Palestinian? Have you ever heard of the Palestinian leader Ghassan Kanafani?
No, I haven't.
All right, so if you look him up on the internet, if you can spell it different ways, I'm not sure people probably know. I think it's Ghanafani or Kanafani. He did an interview with a British TV channel about this very issue. So he said, "Why don't you sit down and talk with the Israelis about peace?" He said, "Talk about what?" And his overall point was this: maybe for you, meaning the interviewer or others around the world who think that their life would be better served by going elsewhere and just kind of giving up on their situation, they would rather die with their dignity on the land they believe to be theirs than be pushed out or squeezed out, ethnically cleansed by some sort of occupying force. And I think most Palestinians are of that mindset.
Yeah, I understand that. I do understand that, but imagine this. Imagine if where you live, a natural disaster occur, like an earthquake or a tornado, you name it. You are forced to leave the place where you live. This is not something that anyone would like to go through, but happens all the time. And the way I see it, I know this is not the best solution. This is not a solution whatsoever. But yeah, there are people who are willing to stay in that land even if this natural disaster occur. And I'm not saying this is natural, because this is not natural.
Well, that's a big difference
made by man.
If there's a natural disaster, like let's say a volcano erupts, that's by chance, right? And nobody can prevent that, and nobody intended that to happen, right? Nobody said let's go start the volcano, because they don't have the ability. So that's a random act of sort of chaos that displaces people. This is not a random act of chaos. This is an intentional act by an entity that wants to expand its territorial boundaries and wants to expel a people that it finds as a nuisance to their objectives.
Well, you know what's funny? Because when I talked with the Jews, they told me that they don't want the Palestinians to leave. They told me, no, we don't want them to leave.
I'm not saying that every person who supports Israel does want that. I'm saying that the driving forces behind the more hardcore elements
No,
that
but
control
no, trust me,
want
they
that.
support the one that I talk with. They support Israel, and they don't want a Palestinian to leave, but they also don't want Palestinian to come into inside Israel, inside a state. So, what
No, I get that.
option does they have?
Well,
They leave
but
no
dude,
options.
here's the question to ask that person: do they support the Jews in the Warsaw Ghetto fighting their oppressive German captors? Yes or no? If they say yes, then you ask them to please shut the fuck up. Because when anybody's in an oppressive occupation circumstance where another group controls your life to your detriment, if you choose to respond in a way that is with force, if you don't have any other option, liberation movements and people who are under occupation have the right to do that according to international law. I support the Warsaw Ghetto uprising and I support the Palestinian resistance to whatever extent. I don't support the tactics against civilians on either side, but
Hmm.
who am I to tell a group of people how they should fight for their land? We did it in our country. The United States colonists fought the British using unconventional tactics. They called us terrorists, and they wanted to be safe too because they thought they had a right to occupy the colonies because it was part of the crown. The people who lived there thought otherwise. So therefore, these are always the power dynamics. For someone to suggest that for pragmatism, that they just leave like toothpaste being squeezed out of a tube and relent to the Israeli determinists to take the land and squeeze them out. Not everybody in Israel, right? Not everybody, but there are many who do. That is giving somebody a steam vent outlet. So if this, by the way, the U.S. is trying to facilitate this as well. The U.S. is trying to encourage other countries like Egypt and Jordan that some of their foreign aid will be tied to accepting Palestinian refugees to basically force them to open up that steam valve. That's what's in play.
Like an
So it's you
obligation.
have all those are the power dynamics that are playing out there. I don't blame Palestinians for wanting to stay in their land. I don't know what I would do if I was in their circumstances, but you seem to think they should leave.
If I were to be in that circumstance, it doesn't matter if I were to be Jew or Palestinian or Muslim. I would leave the place because that place is condemned. They there was no even a single time in the whole human history there hasn't been at war. Middle East has been in war since the existence of mankind. So,
Well, that's not
uh,
true. That's not true. There have been long periods of peace in
well,
the
there
Middle
was
East,
some
but
period of peace, of course, but
yeah. But there
didn't
have
last
been
for long.
there has been a lot of conflict in the region, much of which has been perpetuated by the Western powers and how they've delineated the boundaries, the artificial boundaries of the various nation states. So it's not by accident that there's a lot of chaos in the region. It serves interest to have it be chaotic.
Well, I give you that, but the thing is a little bit deeper than that. Long story short, I wouldn't get even close to the territory that belonged to this Asian god, you name it. Nirthi, Yahweh, anyways. It's the same guy, different disguise, different names along the history. Long time gone already, but he left his conflicts in the place. So perhaps the
Okay, well,
descendant will come over.
thank you. You shared an interesting point of view. I appreciate that. Argentina, I want to see what everyone else has to say. So here's a question for the audience. How about if you give me a 1 for yes or a 2 for no? And this is not to, this is not to be critical of the person who suggested it. This is just for curiosity's sake. One being, do you think the Palestinians should accept the opportunity to leave Gaza or the West Bank and emigrate to Argentina? Or do you think they should stay and resist? So 1 is leave, 2 is stay. Which one do you believe? Somebody put 3 twos. I see one. Pam says they should leave. Other else has said they should stay. Few more ones. Mostly twos. Mostly twos still. Mostly twos. Mostly twos. Yeah. So I would say that probably about 95% of the responses were they should stay and resist if they so choose, or the other 5% said they should take advantage of the opportunity to leave. So my opinion is they should do whatever the hell they want to do. They believe it's their land, and if they want to fight for it. And the other thing to remember is that a lot of the civilians and citizens of Gaza weren't alive when the Hamas group was put into power. And of those that were, only about 72% voted for them. So there was a minority that didn't vote for them. And there may be people who don't even like the way they administer the government. In addition to may not even agreeing with the nature of the attack, although they probably support something to change the ongoing suffering and dynamics that they find themselves in, which any type of resistance activity would be celebrated in that regard only. But obviously, me personally speaking, I'm against the harming of civilians, which was unfortunately a large portion of what happened on that day, a fateful day. But I'm also against the response. I don't think it's fair to be indiscriminate with the use of aerial bombardment, tanks, bulldozers, sniper fire, blah, blah, blah. And there's been a lot of that too, which is very questionable. Let's bring in Mr. Addy. How you doing? What's up?
Let me just give you a quick answer to your question. If I were to have a children's or a 3, 4 children, it doesn't
Well,
matter.
hold on. We got to let some other people come in, but what I'll do is I'll take your answer in a bit here. So, Mr. Addy, how you doing?
Yes, mate. I was just gonna say, they've been trying for 75 years, and they've literally pushed them around, and now they've got to a stage where they can't push them around no more. So, I'm against loss of life in any case. But for resistance, I mean, look what they done to the Palestinians in 1948, 67, and in between. So I think the world's woken up now. So any Zionists out there, pack your bags.
Hello.
Yeah,
Do you want me to make like a breakdown? Do you want me to make a breakdown of the entire history from the 19th century?
Hold on, let's not go there, Ohad. I'm not going to mute you, but if I didn't mute you, but if I don't want to go back into the history. Okay, here's an example of why. Okay, if you don't know the audience, I have video after video of this happening in East Jerusalem. You know that in 1967, the Israelis, in their military action, you can say it's justified or not, occupies East Jerusalem at the end of the conflict, 6-day war. In occupied East Jerusalem to this day, the Israelis drive like container trucks. They look like large garbage trucks full of this liquid. It's this disgusting, like stink water. It's horrendous. And they go by Palestinian homes in East Jerusalem and they spray it all over the homes of the Palestinian residents. Now, here's a question I have for anybody who supports Israel. What security interest of the state of Israel towards what it perceives to be like terrorism does spraying disgusting sewer water in occupied East Jerusalem have to benefit Israel? What is the benefit to Israel's security of doing that?
The only benefit of what you're saying right now is spreading propaganda, because the entirety of that is falsehoods. If you want to have a discussion,
hold on. So just
you
let you know,
can make up.
hold on.
Yes.
No. Listen, I want you to listen. When you say something is propaganda, I have to respond to that. I have 20 videos, 20 different videos, 20 videos showing it happening. I'll happily say, if you look at my video library, just listen for a second. Just listen. If you go into my video library, give me a chance to answer you this. You say you want to see it. It's in my videos. It's in my videos. I don't have many videos with my face not being in the middle. A few of them have like videos while I'm talking with my head on the side. It's one of those, so it's easy to find. But it shows a tanker truck, driving through occupied East Jerusalem, spraying with a sprayer, like a military-style sprayer, on the homes of Palestinians, this skunk water. This has been documented over and over again. This isn't some sort of propaganda thing I'm telling you about. This is real. The reason why I believe the Israelis do that is they do everything possible to make the people of occupied Palestine as miserable as humanly possible. We just seen a huge report come out about how Israel handles detainees. There was a big investigation where people came out. They haven't shown their identity, but they told CNN reporters of what the Israelis have been doing to deal with the captives in their custody, and it is horrific. And this is just emblematic of more and more of the same brutality and infliction of suffering that Israel does on Palestinians for no reason whatsoever other than they can. And then it gets denied as propaganda because people like you come up and say that it never happens.
Did you see, for example, the videos that the age group pulled out of them bounding Palestinians and unaliving them through pew-pews? Have you seen that?
No.
Execution style.
Why did they do it? Tell me why they did it.
Because they got some of the aid that the age group hoards. Okay, so what the age group is doing out there, basically setting themselves up, because of course there is Israel is in complete control right now. So the way they are making money is by selling the international aid that should be free. So if someone is able to get free aid, the aid group say, no, you're not going to do this. We are going to unalive you. Why?
Let me
Because we
respond to that.
control the aid.
Let me respond to that. First of all, let me tell you why I don't believe that. Okay, let me tell you why I don't believe what I just said. First of all,
Fucking
there's no
videos.
evidence. I'm not.
So fucking moron,
Hold
you
on.
absolute imbecile.
Whoa. Slow down. Slow down. Don't use first of all. Don't use cuss words. Secondly, if you have a copy of the video, we can exchange videos. You can look at the one that I referred to you. It's in my library. So this is not something you have to go digging for. I don't have to send it to you. Just go to my page, go down to the one. It's got a picture of a truck driving with my face in the corner, like one of those videos where people's faces with the video in the background. You can see that, okay? If you want to send me videos, I'll give you my Telegram address and I'll give you my email address. So my email address is chipbarnesonline@gmail.com. If you have a video showing the H group in Gaza, where you can definitively point out who the parties are, and it's not from another conflict, where they have bound and execution style unalive them with weapons, I will publish it on my page and call it out as being
Right now,
disgusting.
in the next minute.
Hold on. We can't show the video on the live broadcast anymore. What you can do though is you can describe it and you can show the start page before it begins. But if we show video now on live, they'll take the live down. I don't know why they changed that rule, but they did. So I'd love to see it here. But if you send it to me, what I'll do is I'll do what I have to do to get it so it can be posted without violating community guidelines. You have my word. I always take stuff as evidence, and if it's true, I will acknowledge it, I will condemn it, and I will announce it to my audience. That's the fair thing to do. Now, getting back to what you said, this is why I don't believe that happened. And it may have happened. I can't say for sure because I don't have the evidence. But here's why I don't believe it's true. The H group has actually been going through Gaza and stopping people from profiteering off of reselling aid to people. They haven't been doing it themselves. They've been policing to make sure people do not do it to their fellow people.
You even have people, okay? Just today, I saw quite a few tweets and Facebook posts of Palestinians that have made very similar accusations for UNRWA. So UNRWA employees, which by the way is very publicly known by Palestinians, that a lot of them are associated with the age group, and they call them wastas, okay? Because they are people that are very connected with the government, okay? They call them wastas. So they hoard a lot of the aid and then they sell it. So if you have UNRWA, that the Palestinians are saying that just today they are doing this. You have videos of age group members with AK-47 on trucks, on the trucks going, and when someone tries to go near the trucks, they are unaliving them. There are many videos of this. And I can send you the video that I'm speaking about.
When you say there's many videos, can you send one?
Yes, I can
Just
send you
one.
many of them.
Well, no, just send me. Listen, I've had people do this before, Ohad. Just to let you know, I've been doing this for 7 months.
Okay, give me your Telegram.
I get people all the time on here that tell me they have X, Y, and Z, and then when it comes time to actually provide it, they don't provide a damn thing. They don't even provide one. They say they have tons. They don't provide one. I've already given you
100
one example
videos.
that I have on my page. Okay, you don't have to
Okay,
go
I
look
can
for
give
it.
you 100 videos. What is your Telegram?
Telegram is t.me, like, Telegram address, t as in Tom.me/Chip Barnes.
T.me, then
/Chip Barnes. You can message me. I'll message you back.
forward.
And then you can send me
What does it mean forward?
It's a slash, like a /.
Okay, Chip
Barnes is ES.
Can you write it in the chat?
Yep. Well, I can't write it in the chat. Somebody write it in the chat, please. I don't know how to put a note in the chat. But it's t as in Tom.me, like the word me, / and then my name, Chip Barnes, no spaces. That's how you get into
I'm
Telegram.
trying to find it. I don't find it.
You type that into a web browser. T.me /
So basically Chip Barnes. Okay.
You got to type it, yeah. But other people have been trying to mimic me on Telegram, so be careful which one you look at.
I think that I found you. I will send you a message. If you got a lot of ASD.
Yeah, I
it's
can
me.
pull it up. There we go.
Yeah, and I will send you a video right now as we speak.
Good. This is the important thing to be able to do, folks. And by the way, I just want to mention, going back to the day of October 7th, there have been so many things said about the extent of what happened on that day. So we have different investigations that have occurred that have basically shown that there was evidence of certain things having occurred, right? We had the UNRWA report or the UN report. We have an independent documentary by what's called Screams Before Silence that was done by a bunch of Israelis. It was an Israeli produced documentary that make allegations of things that have happened. So I do believe that some of those things happened. People have told me on this particular live so many times, oh, they have video evidence. It came off the GoPro cameras of the militants. But when it came that time to send them or point me to a Telegram like thread, one guy said there's tons of videos showing all that stuff happening, like babies in the ovens and the women, all that stuff, right? Which is horrible. So I went and looked at 315 separate videos, which took me 6 hours to do. And not one of those videos in that thread showed any of those things. Showed a lot of other lousy stuff, which I didn't want to watch, pretty gross, but it didn't show that. So again, people make these outrageous claims of what things are, and then they don't.
Can I just say something just quickly when you got a chance, please?
So I sent you two videos. One of them is the age group doing to the Palestinians. The other one is from the 7th of October, and I believe that if I just even say what is in it, your live will be taken down.
Hold on. It's really quick. This is really important, okay? So first of all, there's no indication in that video that A, the people doing the firing are H group, and B, what the people did, the younger kids, to deserve to be fired at. There's no clarity there. You're just making a claim based on what you're saying. You're setting it up in a way that doesn't necessarily clarify what happened. It could have happened before the conflict. First of all, those kids could have been convicted of stealing something, and under the laws, that was their punishment. They could have been seen hurting somebody or doing something that was inappropriate based on the way they managed the territory. Or it could have been one group of people. I don't even know if it's inside of Gaza. None of that's very clear from the video.
Let's look at the plate. And the other video shows you a naked woman with something sharp lodged into an intimate area. Okay? So in the first video that you claimed couldn't prove anything, you literally see the Palestinian plates. This is in Gaza. Like in every single car you see Palestinian plates. And you see them speaking in Arabic, and the entire, like the weaponry is very, very, attributed to the H group, like AK-47. And the architecture, even.
Real quick. Okay, so
everything.
Just let me explain to the audience what I just saw. Okay, so in this video, it initially shows like it doesn't have a wide pan. It shows 3 or 4 people that are wearing like jeans and sneakers that look like they're in their late teens, early 20s. There's some younger people opposite and look like they're between like 13 and 16, I'm guessing. There's like 5 or 6 individuals that are sort of near the front edge of some type of structure, like a small house or building. Then one of the men who are facing the younger kids have look like like an AK type of thing or whatever. And they're wearing masks, so it's not clear what their identity is. They do appear to be people who are of like darker skin, like maybe somebody who might be of Arab descent, but it's not clear from the video. Then what it shows is the kids are looking unsettled. They're kind of looking at the guys who are carrying the whatevers, and then one of them starts to boom towards some of the kids as they scatter. Three go to the right, three go to the left. One of whom gets hit in the leg and is on the ground, and a few more shots come towards that person, but it's not clear what happens. As they're panning, following the kids that are dispersing, there are some vehicles parked in the distance. Now, what Ohad is claiming is that they have license plates that are Palestinian. Okay. Now, I don't know enough about the way the license plate looks, and it's very blurry and it's distant. So I'm going to have to go to the video and pause it, blow it up, and try to clarify the image to see how I can see what the plates are and then reference that. I'm not sure. Maybe he's right. But it doesn't tell us when this happened. That's really important. If the video happened, and this doesn't tell us the context for why it happened. Ohad's making this claim. It may be perfectly accurate what he's saying. He may be saying that there were people that were trying to get aid that otherwise the H group militants were trying to keep, and therefore they were trying to hurt these kids or, I guess, disincentivize them from doing it, because not all the kids got hit. Only one kid got hit out of the 6 or 7 kids that were scattering, the best I can tell from the
That's
first
false.
view. Well, tell me
Like
what
4 of
happened.
them were hit. I also send you 2 more videos showing you what I said earlier about Palestinians being basically like handcuffed, I guess, and bound, like they have something on their heads that they can see, and they are also being basically executed by the age group. And you see like the white Toyotas,
Okay,
very
hold on one second, okay? In the first video, there are 7 teens, 7 as the number 7. They scatter. On the left-hand side of the video, one is hit relatively quickly in the lower extremities. Then a few more shots are fired, but it doesn't appear to strike him anywhere in his torso in a deadly way. The second victim, so to speak, was scattering to the right. He was a little further away, and he was hit also in his legs, it appears to be, and fell down. That's all I can see from the video right now, and that's my best interpretation until I have time to look at it more closely. Give me a second.
You can see a lot of people dying. I have no words. Like you can see them literally executing people.
Word. Real quickly, the second video that was sent, sorry, it's raining in here. The second video that was sent, Ohad's claim is that a female had an object inserted into her private section. I first of all, I don't see a video. I see a photograph, and I don't see anything in that photograph that looks anything like that description. It looks like a destroyed area with a little blue something or other. So maybe you sent me the wrong one. Okay, let me look at the third video. And please don't use any TikTok unfriendly language, Ohad, because the lab will get.
I'm sorry, I did send you an image instead of a video. I sent you the video right now.
Videos at my first glance. Okay, guys, I'm going to tell you the best I can. So what happens a lot of times in these exchanges, and this is not that both sides haven't done this, okay? Because it's very easy to take an Israeli atrocity from, let's say, 2014 and play the video now and claim that this is happening because of what happened on 10/7. That happens sometimes, okay? Doesn't negate the fact that the atrocity occurred. It just means that someone's trying to amplify their side of the information flow because of that use. Same thing here, okay? Now, the videos that have been sent subsequent to that are more violent, it's not clear where the vehicles were. It's not clear when the video was shot, and it's not clear who is doing what to whom. So without that
Literally,
context,
Toyotas, same that were used on the 7th of October.
But those vehicles could have been around long before they were used that day, and these images could be done way before this. It could even be from a different region, by the way. This is the other thing that happens. And by the way, this is, unfortunately, I was sent video. Remember that list of videos I looked at? Okay, some of the atrocities that were being blamed on the H group in that whole compilation of videos were in Syria or in northern Iraq that were done by ISIS. It had nothing to do with the H group. And I know those videos because I've seen them before, back in like 2005. So this is why I get so frustrated with the Israeli side of this, because this, and Ohad, I don't mean this to be a direct attack on you, but Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson said this, and I'm going to repeat it for the audience. Never believe a single word that comes out of the mouth of an Israeli official. They lie. They are abject liars. They are liars. He worked as the assistant to Colin Powell. He was the chief of staff to Secretary of Defense Colin Powell during the Bush administration for 6 years. He dealt directly with the Israelis. And that was his conclusion. Unfortunately, the way information flows, and by the way, you got to give Israel credit. They're the best in the world at this. They have a very proactive, very deceptive way of communicating, even on these platforms. And I don't know if Ohad's doing it sincerely or not sincerely. I don't know his motives. But it's hard for somebody like me, when somebody like Ohad sends what he said, that it happened inside of any particular territory by any particular actor at any particular time. None of that is clear from the video.
It actually is because in every single video that I sent you, I really hope that you see that at least 2 videos are connected to the same incident, and in both of them, like in the three videos that I sent you about the age group, you can see the Palestinian license plate, and you can also see like the way the clothing that they have. The area looks much like Gaza, and the car that they're using, this Toyota, okay, can't be too old, so it must be recent. Like it's not a very old car.
Let's analyze that statement you just made for a second, Ohad. Okay, now most cars and trucks can last between 7 to 10 years on average. And I don't know, based on the conditions there, the weather, the different environmental stuff that can affect the vehicle. You're making the claim that because they're relatively recent vehicles, that necessitates that they must have been used during this conflict because they're newer model vehicles. Now, if there was a brand new vehicle that was only available in since January of 2024, and they were driving that vehicle in the territory with the license plate, with identifiable markings of the individuals being related to that group, yes, fair enough. But to make the extrapolation that because the vehicle is not from 1970, that it must be therefore being used during the conflict that's not consistent. That makes no sense.
Do you want me to send you the videos of them pew-pewing people that try to get near the Atrox?
You can send me whatever you want. By the way, I saw the videos that you've sent me so far. There was a charred remains of somebody. Doesn't show if it's male or female, as far as I can tell. And I can't
If you
see.
don't see that's a female, I guess you need to check your eyes.
Well, in other words,
And she has her pants down, and she's been basically rolled into a Zaka bag. Okay, you can clearly see this is a bag of Zaka, because this is how they look. You can look it up in Google. So this is from the 7th of October. This is a female. Okay, her pants have been removed, basically like to the knees. Her body have been completely destroyed by fire. And she is being like her body is being handled into a Zakabe. This is what you see, and I'm sorry for the absolutely gruesome description. And if you ask me, it looks like a grape, and after that they unalived her with fire.
Well, if indeed the thing that you're referring to in the midsection is something that was quote unquote inserted prior to the burning process, then yeah, that's disgusting. I would be against that wholeheartedly. Are we clear based on the evidence of, by the way, Zaka, just so you know, if people don't know what Zaka is sort of a volunteer group that responds to emergencies in Israel, especially when there's some sort of an event like a Palestinian, what they like to call a T attack, that they respond to deal with the aftermath. And so
They
there's a
always
guy that,
respond about the aftermath. Like it doesn't
yeah,
matter how they die.
that's what I mean. They're like the responding force. They're not they're not an official government entity. It's like a group. It's almost like an organization that groups together to deal with these types of situations. It's a very strange phenomenon that doesn't exist in our country. But the leader of Zaka, and there are videos about this. You can look this up. He made the claim publicly as he approached one of the kibbutzim. I don't remember which one. That he went in and observed. This is his testimony in front of a camera. That he observed a woman who had been pregnant, and that the unalived thing inside of her had been removed with incisions while it was still alive, and then she was banged in the back of the head with a pow, and that they stabbed the baby. That was the claim that he made. And then during an interview after that with an interviewer, the interviewer said, "Wow, that's horrific. Do you have the evidence that shows this?" And he says, "Yes, I have pictures on my phone." And then he has to go get his phone. He comes back to the interview, and he's standing up with the interviewer. They're not showing the pictures to the audience because it's obviously disgusting stuff. And he shows the person who's interviewing him a photograph of a floor with what looks to be like stains of what comes out of our body if we, slit our wrists. That's what he showed him as the evidence. He goes, "Well, look, this is where it happened." He's like, "Well, I don't mean to be insensitive, but this doesn't show a woman. It doesn't show an incision. It doesn't show a back of the head, and it doesn't show a stabbing." He's like, "Well, this is where it happened. We didn't think to take pictures at the time." Now, are you kidding me? Are you telling me that if you're documenting atrocities and trying to levy those accusations against a T group, that you're not going to document those atrocities? You're just going to forget to do it, like we forgot at the time? This is the group that responds every single time that there's any sort of tragic outcome in Israel, and they document everything.
Can I
And yet you
stop you
didn't
for a
document
second?
this, but yeah, that's a ridiculous claim.
No, you're making a ridiculous claim. So first of all, they are absolutely barred. I guess this is the word. I'm not English is my second language, but they are not allowed, to document anything. Like the only reason we have any footage
Yeah.
of unalive people is because some people didn't listen to this rule. And I can send you many photos of this because it was so widespread, and because at some point people realized, okay, we need to document this because in normal situations, nobody wants to document someone being unalived, right? Like it doesn't make any sense. Of course, from a religious perspective, it's the most taboo thing you can do.
This is an important. This is the explanation that I've heard over and over again when I've had this conversation. So what Ohad is saying is that according to traditions of their faith or their society, that for them it's inappropriate or disallowed to take photographs or make video evidence of, it's like disrespecting the dead, so to speak. Now that's an awfully convenient it's an awfully convenient practice to then make claims, and then after making the claims say, well, we couldn't document it because of our societal practice. It's disrespectful towards the dead. How can you expect people then in the face of that? Hey, David, you got to keep quiet, my friend. Please stay muted. How can you then expect the world, based on that version of events, to automatically accept every single allegation that you make about these horrible atrocities? It's a very difficult leap to ask people to make. Just like the interviewer, which is normal human behavior. If somebody claims they have evidence of something, right? I got the evidence. Okay, show me. So he goes, here, I'm showing you. And you're like, well, that's not the evidence. Where's the evidence? Well, I didn't think we didn't think at the time. Give me a break.
Hey
Give me
Chip,
a
how you doing,
break.
buddy?
Okay,
How
can I
are you
just
Do you
today,
answer
my
agree
you
with that,
one
friend?
last time
Federico?
before you go?
Am I going crazy? Let's let you. I got some more videos to look at. Let's let Federico a second, and then we'll get you back again. Go ahead.
How you doing, Chip? How is
Go
everybody?
ahead, Federico.
Man, I've been listening for like a half hour to this guy. Now you wanna tell me, man, that the people that were expelled from Europe and sent to Palestine on boats, where the Palestinians welcomed them in their homes, and they ended up taking their lands, unaliving hundreds of thousands of them, and they're still unaliving them today. And this guy has the audacity to come up here, sit on the panel, and make them look bad. The fuck is wrong with you, buddy? Like, what the heck? Can't you see around you? Don't you look on TV? Don't you see the images? The only ugly one over here are the Israelis. The people are committing genocide right now are Israeli. The babies that are dying in Gaza are Palestinians, the original owners of the motherfucker land. So if you're gonna sit up here and start making up stories and telling your fucking lies, you better go somewhere else, buddy. And you should be ashamed of yourself. You should go bury yourself in the sand because you're less
I
than a
couldn't give a
human.
single fuck what a
I don't
Muslim
give a
extremist
fuck.
like you think about me.
Muslim
All right, hold on,
extremist, you're the
hold
extremist.
on, real quick, guys, real quick. This is important. So for the foul language, we get flagged for that stuff if it's pronounced. So I just dropped Ohad. Ohad, if you want to stay in the audience and come back up, I can bring you up. Listen, guys, let's not attack each other personally. Let's keep the facts to the facts. Now, Ohad has sent me a number of videos and pictures, okay, which I've just reviewed while we're talking here. I don't particularly like looking at these things, but I've seen a lot of it because I was in the army. I've seen a lot of carnage. I probably am better at looking at it than most. What's not clear in everything that he sent is where these photos are from. Now, I can't doubt what he's sending me because if they do all turn out to be in the locations that he claims at the time he claims they were made, then yes, they do indicate some bad things having happened. Most of which I'm already aware of, some of which I might be seeing for the first time if they're there. Here's an example. I'll give you one example. I'm going to have to talk through it the best way that I can without getting in trouble. It shows a picture at first with two unalived individuals, one of whom is laying in a bed, one is sort of curled up next to it. They're kind of look like they're going through decomposition or whatever. The reason why I think that's not from Israel is because people didn't have time to sit and decompose before they were found. The day they were found immediately at the time of death. If you don't know much about what bodies look like at the time of death, which I unfortunately do, they don't start to bloat and darken within the first like 12 hours. They then slowly start to do that as the gases get released within the body. It starts to do some discoloration. It's a process of decomposition which has different stages. If you ever investigate crimes, you know this based on this is the timing of where you can backdate to a crime. The photograph that Ohad sent me shows a deceased individual that is well into his second day of decomposition. I know that for a fact. Secondly, he shows a group of 3 people that are wearing sunglasses and bandanas and hats with a sort of a jihadist type of picture in the back. I don't know exactly what it is, holding the severed, above the shoulder thing of one of the people, the person on the bed, appeared to have had that part of their body taken with them. And it shows a picture of them holding it up and saying something to the camera in the video. Now, again, I doubt that is from this conflict, but it could be. But I don't know why the person in the picture would be decomposing after a second or third day. That doesn't make any sense to me. The picture must be from some other place because they were found later and then the thing was taken with and someone else did this. But it looks to me like it was done by some other violent group. But that's my first impression. But again, if I'm wrong, I will inform the audience. I think that's fair to do. The hard part with some of these videos that get sent is people like Ohad or others, I think in good faith, see these things and think, well, it's got to be the barbaric actions of the H group that day. But remember, the Israelis are extremely sophisticated with how they manipulate and misinform not only the general public outside of Israel, but their own people and their own supporters, as does the US government and other governments, but they're especially effective at it. So I'm usually very reticent to accept on first look anything that comes through that channel because it has such a history of being completely from other places, complete fabrications, et cetera, et cetera. Now, as I said before, though, in fairness, I have an obligation to an audience of 120,000 people in my following to be honest. And if something does turn out to be from that day, if these do turn out to be authentic videos and pictures, I will address them accordingly and acknowledge them as which is fair to do. But I always have my spidey sense up when it comes to the OHADs of the world and the Israeli sources of information because I've been given so many claims about what is there that proves this and that, and nothing has ever come of it. And a lot of stuff that has come has been from other places by other people trying to make the H group look like barbarians. I'm not defending the H group, but there's no reason to do more than what happened on 10/7. Yes, a lot of what happened on 10/7 that I do have evidence of is bad enough to say they did some bad things, no doubt about it. But why they try to embellish it and ramp it up is because they know that the public, who generally will either support or not support what would happen next, the resistance. If there are babies in ovens, women being, things cut out of them and stabbed, or whether the people essayed, that incites a lot of anger and outrage among people, and therefore whatever someone does in response seems justifiable, more so than what would be if it was just the other items that took place in terms of civilians not surviving. That's why I believe this shit is happening. And again, if it's honest, then we should talk about it. But if it's dishonest, we should call it out and say bullshit. Okay,
Hey,
David, do you want
Chip,
to say anything?
something I should let everybody should be aware of that one of the largest unit in the Israeli army is called the Mustaribin. It means the Arabized people that speaks Arabic, speaks the language, dress like the people, act like the people, and most of the operation, like if you remember the one that was executed in the hospital, where they walked in dressed all like into the emergency room, they were dressed all like Arabs, and then they went in and they unalived 2 people in the hospital. That happened about a couple of months ago. This is one of the largest units. So that unit can be acting in any way or shape, videotaping themselves and running it as resistance. Resistance are honest people. They're defending their lands. They're not vicious. They go by the order of the law of religion and the law of humanity. And All that stuff you guys hear around, it's all Israeli propaganda, paid for, prepared. And if it's not done by them, it's facilitated by them so someone can look bad.
Let me be fair and say this, because I always do my very best to try to be as fair as I can. Everyone accuses me of being slanted. So some things have been sent to me that I want to share with the audience about these issues. So there was a UN investigation, but the UN investigation was based on Israel testimony. But they seemed to think it was credible enough based on their analysis and the other things that they saw that were given to them from that day, that they believed there were instances of SA that took place. No corroboration of the babies and ovens thing, the pregnant woman thing. None of that stuff's ever been. The 40 babies and all that stuff's just a bunch of amplification and exaggeration. So, in fairness, we have to acknowledge that if a committee of people did some looking into something that supposedly are impartial and they come up with findings that indicate something, we should give that credibility. That's fair. In addition, if we see any videos of something that turns out to be legitimate from that day, which I've seen many, of let's say a civilian walking down the street and then boom, or a car driving by and then boom, boom, boom. If those things happen, we have to call them out, because I don't want any Israeli soldier doing that to a Palestinian civilian, whether it's on a road or walking down the street or whatever. And I don't want anybody from a militant group that's resisting occupation to do that to a civilian, maybe just because they're angry or whatever it may be. I think each are worthy of being called a crime that shouldn't have happened. If it's soldiers, that's a different thing. And my understanding is of the 1,050 or 1,100 people, the numbers keep dropping down, of actual civilians, of people that day from Israel, about 380 to 410 were either security guards or uniformed soldiers or soldiers sleeping in barracks or whatever the case may be. That means that about 750 to 800 people, no, 650 to 700 people, which are civilians from the Nova Festival, from the various neighborhoods or communities, that they perished. We don't know how many of them, based on the Israeli response from above and on the ground, were caught up in that part of it, which a lot of eyewitness testimony from Israelis have pointed out happened, but it may be 10%, it may be 20%, it may be 30%. Safe to say, though, a lot of civilians on that day, which I've seen videos of, were unalived by H group militants, which I am wholeheartedly against. And I call it out as a horrific war crime, as it should be. But I don't know if some of the more egregious accusations and allegations have any substantive evidence to substantiate them, because with all the efforts that I've made, and I've made videos about this over and over again, and I don't want to be insensitive, because if these things did happen, I wouldn't, if I'm a family member and this happened to my family and someone was doubting, I'd be like, dude, what is wrong with you? But I think this has been so hammered into the ethos of the Israeli society and of Israel supporters that because they've been told it 30 times that there were mutilations and widespread rapes and babies, that it just sticks in their head, and they hear there's H group militant footage and evidence, and those two go together, and then they talk with sort of a certainty that these things occurred. And if you question it, you're anti-Semitic. I say bullshit. No other investigation should follow that same rule, that if you ask questions, you're a bad dude and you hate the people who make the allegations. That's absurd. Okay, let's let Ohad. I made a lot of comments. Let's let Ohad come in and say what he wants to say.
Thank you. First of all, I invite every single one here to go to 7thofoctober.com and see for yourself. I'm not making anything up. And if you want just a very good...
Hold on, I'm not trying to cut you off, Ohad. Just a real quick warning. People also said in the beginning of this conflict that they had a directory of photographs and everything at Hamas.com. That site was infected with malware that would destroy your computer if you went there. Don't go to a website ever that's sponsored by Israel, because it's infected with malware. It'll ruin your computer. Okay? But if there's evidence from there that can be posted on a Telegram channel, Ohad, mine or others, put it on Telegram where it's not going to infect somebody trying to seek it.
So I know who pulled up this website, don't worry. Just to give you guys a very good examples of Chip Barnes being a propagandist, I sent them a video that shows the following: a severed head and two militants wearing what is undoubtedly...
Ohad, I described it to everybody. Ohad, I described it exactly what is on there.
You didn't.
Okay, what did I get wrong?
It shows them with Palestinian Islamic Jihad hats and a flag, a very big one that you can't miss. And I also sent him the picture of the guy that this ad belongs to. And this guy have been unalived on the 7th of October.
You got to listen for a second, guys. Let me say this one more time, okay? I've seen a lot of bad stuff in my life. I used to be on a site called Documenting Reality, which shows all sorts of horrific things in life. So I've seen a lot of crazy stuff. In the process, I've learned a lot about what the human body looks like from the moment of unaliving over time. You can, whether somebody's been for a week, 2 weeks, 2 or 3 days. The photographs that Ohad sent me are of human beings that have been unalived for more than 2 or 3 days. The people on October 7th that were found on the same day, on October 7th. Not 2 days later, not 5 days later, not a week later. The people in this picture, I wish I could show it, are going through extensive decomposition where the eyes are starting to bulge out of the head because of the gaseous compression and the discoloration of the skin. Okay, it's disgusting. I don't want to show it to you. The photographs he's showing you are total bullshit. Total bullshit. So Ohad, come with something else. That's not from October 7th.
Okay, how much time, and I can send you, of course, many other videos, some of them showing what can't be missed as a Jewish objects or Zuckerberg, something like that. How much time did it actually took the IDF to clear out the area and actually get the bodies out? Like the fightings inside the kibbutzes have been going on for about 2 days after the 7th of October. Like they only cleared the kibbutzes in the 9th of October, 2 days after. So I guess that you only want to prove me right, because this is quite what you're doing. And I would appreciate, like, if you have, for example, a Telegram channel where things are not censored at all, that you give your viewers the option to see what I sent you. I already sent them a link multiple times that they can see themselves, but I guess that if they want to be mindless, hive mind-like creatures in TikTok, it will also do. I can give you the
TLX, you wanna
information.
speak, buddy?
Give you the
TLX.
information.
We got to give
You
some other people a
Yeah,
chance
I'm,
real quick.
I'm waiting for Chip.
Let's let Mr. Addy go, and then we'll go to TLX. Go ahead, Mr. Addy.
No, I'm just going to say one quick thing. I mean, any loss of life is tragic. I get it, but they go on about October the 11th, October the 7th. But if they look, 5 October the 7th have been done since 2008. But they don't worry about that. 6,407 Palestinians have been killed since 2008. But they don't worry about that. It's sickening. That's all I got to say, Chip.
Well, I want to answer that. Yes. So you hear a lot about October 7th, and I know it was sudden and it was horrific, and it was, if I was Israeli, I would have been like shocked and angered and just disgusted, the whole 9 yards. I get it. So when something is sudden, it's usually very more impactful. But the slow and steady unaliving of Palestinians that has occurred at the hands of the Israeli military for many decades leads to a much more cumulative impact on a population of people psychologically and just from the standpoint of the numbers than any one single event that can take place, as have taken place, including cafes, buses, and October 7th, all of which I condemn because I think the tactics are reprehensible. Civilians, in my opinion, should never be harmed and be held responsible for the actions of their government or their military. That's just my view, but it's not for me to tell anybody how to run their country or their history or their resistance. Having said that, the people from Israel who point to this and say they started this, we're going to finish this. They didn't start anything. The Israeli government and military have been doing slow but steady unaliving, as I just mentioned, and immiserating of a group of people. Like I talked about the skunk water, the smelly water. Why do you go through a town and spray homes with skunk water? Why do you weld their doors shut because you want to have a street in Hebron be Jewish only? Why do you poison people's fields? Why do you pour cement into their water wells? Why do you destroy the castrons on top of their homes that they collect rainwater with? This is all ethnic cleansing and immiseration of a population. Israel's been doing it for
This is all
decades.
propaganda.
So this is the problem with people like Ohad and others who support Israel who live there. They don't know. They're not aware of these atrocities. They have no idea what happens in the occupied territory. They don't understand that they're not just checkpoints on the border. There are checkpoints riddled through the entirety of the West Bank that make getting from point A to point B nearly impossible. And some days you can't even pass. Some 18-year-old kid with a rifle and a helmet gets to decide whether you get to go through a checkpoint if you're over the age of 21 years old as a male. It can take you an hour to get to work if you're 20 minutes away, or it can take you 6 hours. Now, how are you supposed to live a life? And by the way, sometimes if you don't make it through a checkpoint on the way home, or if a soldier decides you got to sleep out on the ground, you can't even go home. This is daily life for people in the occupied territories. And that's the best part of it, what I just described. It only gets worse from there. Now, the people like Ohad think that if a soldier bullies an old man or knocks down an old woman or butts him with the rifle or shoots a 12-year-old kid because he's carrying a Palestinian flag, that's the exception and they're held accountable. No, they're not. No, it isn't. This is why there's so many deaths in the occupied territory. This is why so many Palestinians don't survive. And if they dare to throw a rock back after their friend gets killed, they're taken off to jail for 6 months to a year for a minor misdemeanor. Didn't even get the stone netted nowhere near somebody. It's one thing if you break somebody's face or hurt them or break their leg. That's assault with a deadly rock. But that doesn't happen. But they're considered a T word, and therefore they get a ridiculous sentence from a military court where 99.7% of everybody who goes through it are convicted and put in some sort of detainment. Once they're in detainment, they're horribly mistreated. As we're seeing right now, there's a huge reveal by anonymous undercover sources that used to work in these prison facilities of how horribly Palestinians are being mistreated. People like Ohad would say, oh, that's propaganda. That's propaganda. It's being reported publicly
I
with footage.
sent you a link. This link leads to a mega thread, the biggest one you will probably see, of all the documented Palestinian unalivings of 2023. In every single one of them,
TLX, you
you
wanna
will
speak?
see a picture of the guy in question, and you
TLX,
will see
you can go ahead,
proofs
brother.
of him being part of a T group.
I'll let him
And I
finish.
can give you some examples. At that,
TLX, go ahead, Hogan. Go ahead, Habib.
why you
I'm
want to?
gonna respond. Listen, Ohad,
Hold on,
listen.
just 1 sec.
I never
Let me address
finished.
Ohad.
What are you
I'll
Let
let
me
responding to?
let me
Chip
address.
moderate it.
Hold on. Let me address. Oh, let me address you for
What are you
1 second.
responding to if I didn't?
Hold on. We can't give you unlimited time to go. It's if you're making the allegation that
Talk
if I
for
understand you correctly.
5
Hold on.
seconds.
Hold on. Let me finish for a second. If you're making the
5
allegation that
seconds.
there's people. All right, let's do this again. You're welcome to come back up. If you're making an allegation of a widespread thing, we don't need to hear every single thing of it. The description and the overall context is what we need to hear. Then I'll go investigate it. Because you making the claim, you've made other claims today about what's happened. I've looked at the videos and pictures, and it doesn't appear to match what you're saying. Okay, it could be. I need to investigate further. But on first glance, it looks like bullshit, which is a typical tactic of people like you and other information. But if there is pictorial or video evidence that show that can prove or substantiate allegations, then I will reveal it to the audience as if it's truthful, as one should. Okay, but you keep going on and on and on about stuff that turns out to be bullshit. I have pictures and video of everything I'm talking to you about right now, including cement being poured into wells, people being held up at checkpoints, kids being shot in the knee, the groin, the chest, the head for holding a Palestinian flag at a protest. They're eons away from any Israeli soldier. I have pictures of kids throwing rocks, having their hands broken, being shot, being arrested, sweeping up other people, going into Palestinian homes at night to set up a fire base and terrorizing the family, and on and on and on and on. I got pictures and video of every single one of them. And you're sending me this bullshit. What do you expect someone like me to do? This is the same garbage I've been given over and over for 7 months. This definitely happened. We definitely have the video to prove it. You send shit, nothing proves jack shit. So I have the Telegram.
Let's wait for Chip. I'll wait for Chip because I'm gonna need like a good couple of minutes.
Go ahead, TLX. He is listening.
1 sec. Let me just go to the thread and look.
He wants us to wait. we'll show these
Can you
guys
all
what example we
can
are.
you all still hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, TLX, go ahead and say what you want to say. I'm going to go ahead and look at the thread. It's Twitter, so it doesn't seem to be. I'll take a look at
Okay. I'm sure he's listening in the comments, and what my point is doesn't matter what they bring into the table. Nothing that shows someone doing something justifies collective punishment. Doesn't mean if I have a rogue guy in my community, now my whole community has to pay the price. That's your logic, man. And when you bring this kind of logic to the table, it just kind of shows your demeanor. And more on that of what Chip's saying is that the first video I saw right after all this started is a bunch of people in London dressed up as Arab militants, trying to pretend like they're selling, you know, jariyas, which is, you know, young females, and they're trading them like they're cattle. And you could see the London bus in the background pass by. It's like you could clearly see this is in London, and their accents are terrible, and they're shouting out, "ISIS, we are T's." It's like so obviously fake. And when content like that comes out, you don't even want to trust anything that comes out after that.
Is that
And
on YouTube?
yeah, it's
Oh
ridiculous,
no.
the lies that
Okay.
comes out. Go ahead, Chip.
Okay, real quick. Okay, so I just took a look at the Twitter thread. So let me tell you what it shows. The overall theme of it is that this is what it tries to depict, and maybe it does. That anytime a civilian, which people like me are alleging are unalived in the West Bank, that they are indeed someone who is a well-trained or very deeply embedded militant or T-word. That's always the allegation. Here's my question. Maybe the ones that are shown, it's 46 people they show pictures of to some extent. Now, if there were only 46 people that were unalived in the occupied territories, I'd say, okay, Odd, got it. Maybe that's fair. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds that have been killed in the West Bank over the years. Shot at, shot in the groin, shot in the face, have their hands broken, all these things, not 46. Now, if you have documentation on every single one of these people being well-trained militants with the intent to commit acts of T-word, okay, fair enough. But that doesn't exist. So there may be some instances. But here's the other thing. Just because somebody may have a photograph with themselves having trained in with a resistance group doesn't mean they were actively instigating a crime at the time that you unalived them. It means that at some point in their life, they had access to equipment that was related to some form of training. Every person who was a civilian that was killed on 10/7 has been in the IDF. There are pictures of them having held weapons, having been in uniform. They then died. Is that fair? So you have to apply the same standard to both groups if you're going to use that as a justification for, quote, taking them out. Okay? David, why don't you go ahead?
Shireen Abu Akli, American citizens.
Yeah, we can talk about it. Let's give David a chance to come in, Federico. Let's give David a chance.
Hey, how's it going, everyone?
Hey, David, what's up?
Hey, how's it going? I've been listening to Mr. Ohad, and I completely agree with you, Chip. I've heard those same accusations numerous times, watching videos, joining live videos, things like that, and they meaning the Israeli propagandist or whatever you call them, they will do whatever it takes, find videos of something that happened in Yemen 5, 7, 8 years ago. They'll find things like has absolutely nothing to do with the situation that's going on in Palestine and try to make it look like as if it is something that a age group had done or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's pretty consistent. It's a very consistent practice, unfortunately. And again, let's be fair. If any of the evidence that's being forwarded or posted on Telegram turns out to be accurate, it's fair to acknowledge it. One of the challenges, time frame.
100%.
So if the video is sent, let's say it is from Gaza, and let's say it is some kids being punished or, pow-powed at for whatever they may have done or whatever reason. We don't know what the reason is, first of all. We don't know who's doing it, second of all. We don't know where they're doing it, third of all. And we don't know when they did it. Those are a lot of unanswered questions. And then you say, well, it just proves that they're taking aid or punishing people who are stealing aid. Where do you get that from? Right? How does one garner that from the video? Now, if it showed kids near a truck that were trying to take stuff and they're being shooed away and pow-powed, that shows that the kids are trying to take aid and that militant people seemingly are trying to dissuade them or stop them from doing it, right? That's called evidence. Showing a video of people near a wall in a place which is in the middle of nowhere and they scatter and one or two gets hit in the leg doesn't indicate what you said. What are we supposed to do with that? I don't understand. I just don't understand how someone's supposed to accept that on face value for being evidence of that.
Can't do anything with that. Can't do nothing with
You
that.
can also
You happen to see Chip the video
you can
of
also
the
say,
people, the civilians
why is
that
it
were on the rooftop and they were trying to get
why does your
some rainwater
Hold
that
on,
they
hold on,
had
hold on.
collected. Chip, do you remember that or no?
Say that again.
Do you
Excuse me.
remember seeing the video? It looked like a whole bunch of civilians. I don't want to say a family or something, but it was like a whole bunch of people together, and they were up on the rooftop, and they were trying to get water out of
Yeah.
the. There was a big, huge, like a reservoir type thing that they had. They were on the roof collecting rainwater to drink, and a aerial chopper, whatever you call those things, from above their heads, shot them or dropped a bomb on them or something like that. I have the video on my old phone. I really want to send it to you if you haven't seen it.
Yeah, I'd
And
like to see it.
you can see clear as day. It looks just like a rooftop in Palestine and probably in Gaza, and they're trying to get the water out of the like rainwater they collected, and they drop a effing, right on top of their heads. Like you could see the explosion and all, man. It was like it really hurt me, because I'm Palestinian.
I actually have that video, and somebody told me that was from Sudan. So I want to make sure I make it again. We have to make sure we're fair on both sides of this and make sure we use the same standards. But I'm happy
Yeah.
to take a look at that one if it's something. You can do the Telegram thing if you want to send it to me. Did you hear?
Yeah,
it?
I heard how you do it. I'll locate it on my old phone now, and I'll send it to you now.
That sounds good. Thank you. Okay,
Yes, sir.
I did mention Ohad. Let's give him a chance to respond, and then we'll let that talk come in, and then we'll go around the horn.
Thank you. First of all, I can send you the videos of, you see, militants, age group, pew pew in Palestinians that try to get near the trucks. If you want, I will send you those videos also. When you say, okay, like what happened, blah, 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 the West Bank, we can go about the whole history of it. From the 19th century until now. And you will see that no matter what year you took, the Palestinians have been governed by a T group. It was the Fayadins, then it was the PLO, the PLFLP, whatever it's called, the guys that took over airplanes, object airplanes. Then it was the age group and the Fatah. Okay?
What's
They
your point?
can't.
What point are you trying to make, Ohad?
Like they were never peaceful people. They were never peaceful people. Like the reason why the Palestinians still don't have a state is solely from their inability to try and unalive Jews.
Okay, let's
Solely
address,
that.
let's address that for a second. Let's address that. So this is a really important question. You have to leave this microphone open, but I just want to make this one point. I bring this up constantly. Excuse me, hold on.
I mentioned the short end of the stick that they've been.
This is a very important issue. Question about motivation. What motivates the violence that Ohad's referencing? Okay, it could be that it's religious based. It could be a combination. By the way, these are three things that I point out. Let's just think of these things. Could be religious. Let's just say that these people are Muslim fanatics and they want everyone to be a Muslim. They want everyone to live under Sharia, and therefore they want to implement their will. And part of that is unaliving people who don't comply or heathens or whatever, apostates. Secondly, it could be because they literally just have an abject hatred of Jews in general, that these people are anti-Jewish. They're anti-Semitic to the core. They hate Jews. And so therefore their motivation in life is to unalive Jews. Like they just hate them, right? That's the second motivation. It could be both. The third motivation could be that these are people who are upset that their forefathers and their families, many of whom still have the keys to the homes in which their forefathers lived in, many of whom were unalive, were forcibly dispossessed off of the land they felt they had been legitimately living on for centuries, that they'd been relatively in peace with others who were not part of their quote-unquote core religious group, people who were Jewish versus Christian versus Arab or Muslim, that they were forced off their land at the end of weapons, that they've been dispersed and created as refugees in places like Gaza, in the West Bank, in Jordan, in Lebanon, in Egypt, wherever they may have gone, and that collectively they feel that was wrong. They referred to it as the catastrophe or the Nakba. Other people call it the glorious establishment of the state of Israel, the Jewish homeland. Okay, different ways of viewing the same thing. The question is, what motivates these people? Is it hatred of Jews? Is it Muslim caliphate and want to control people? Or is it the anger from the dispossession of land and the lack of political light at the end of the tunnel to create autonomy and a distinct self-determination? Which one is it, Oad? Or all of them?
You ask me a question and then your
Yeah, it's okay. Go ahead. Please don't mute him. Go ahead. Yeah,
then
go
your
ahead.
minions mute me. So if you want a breakdown of history, I can give you from
No. Let's focus on the motivations. What do you believe the motivations are for these violent characteristics you keep referring to?
Well, it's certainly religious extremism,
Okay.
and it's religious extremism that have started much prior to 1948. It started much before that. The Arab riots, for example, were in 1920, okay, where a lot of Jews were unalived by extremist Muslims, which also what started the Haganah. The Haganah was created because of the Arab riots in 1920, okay? And then you have the Brits that gave the Transjordan to what is now Jordan. In 1929, you have the Al-Mufti, which a lot of people attribute him to be the leader, the previous leaders of the Palestinians, right? And he tried basically to make a deal with the Yazis, then the Hitler. And he also started, or motivated, the 1929 Hebron massacre, which was an ethnic cleansing of Jews in Hebron. Right? Am I missing something?
Not exactly, but go ahead. Your history's a little bit slanted, but go ahead.
Because this is kind of outrageous.
In
Yeah,
19 say the word free like in plural. In 1933, okay, you have the Peel Commission, which wanted to give a very small percentage of the land to the Jews to have their own sovereign state. It's important to say that the most of this land was already Jewish land, Jewish-owned land. The Arabs refused that.
Wow.
And then let's go to 1947.
Why?
The Arabs.
Hold on. Look, let's address some of the points you're making. We can put a little stop there. We've talked about a lot of stuff. So again, why is a really important thing. Human behavior is always motivated by something. We talk about when crimes are committed, the first thing the police look at is motive. Like, who would want to do this? Why would they want to do this? So that's why I wanted to nail down the why. Now, you said it's religious extremism that has occurred prior to the formation of the State of Israel. Now, here's what one could argue when you say that. You're saying that from a point of view. You're saying the Haganah and the Stern Group and other groups, other violent groups came to be as in a response to Muslim extremism and violence. What changed from 1900 to 1935 in the land of Palestine? What were the biggest changes that occurred?
Okay, can I get the answer? Yeah, there was definitely migration. By the way, it was not only Jewish migration; it was also Arab migration. One of the reasons why there was such a big migration in general is because the Jews that, for example, came from wealthy places have brought a lot of prosperity with them. and they cultivated a lot of the land that was prior to that unlivable, and they made it into a livable place. Okay, they dried the swamps. Okay, and you can read about it. And I believe that it was
Percentage wise, what change did the Jewish population go through from 1900 to 1935 in Palestine?
the Jewish population grew by 250%, and the Arab population grew by 100 and something percent. Okay, so
Okay,
both of
try
them
six
grew.
try 620% was the Jewish population change. 620%. If you look at the population of Jews in 1900 and in 1935, excuse me, you can Google it right now.
Between which years? Sorry, maybe I didn't read. Maybe I didn't hear you correctly. I'm sorry.
I feel so
Between which
sorry
years?
for our ears. I
The
swear.
point is when you have immigration of that extent in any region, it is disruptive and unsettling to the larger native population. Look at Texas right now in the United States. Look at Arizona. You have a huge influx. Look at Europe. You have huge influxes of refugees and people seeking asylum. It creates havoc. It's not unusual for human beings who have a huge influx of a foreign group with whom they don't have a lot in common, which they had been previously living in harmony with a smaller group, starts to create friction. That is not people being inherently violent and hateful towards others. It is the normal friction that accompanies mass immigration into a region that drastically changes the demographics of the region.
Can I answer that?
Yeah.
So historically, in this area, like not even in general, in this area particularly, the Jews were subjugated to Muslim rule where they were oppressed. Okay, so you say that they were you're trying to say that they were treated equally. They were not. Like the reason why they basically wanted their own sovereignty is because of that, like because of this history. This is the reason why they wanted their own sovereignty, because they knew that under Muslim rule they will be subject and oppressed, and they didn't want this future. So in 37, the partition plan, like finally it got to the United Nations. The partition plan was offered, and what did it offer? It offered that some like the basically a split. Some of that will be under Jewish rule, and some of that will be under Arab rule. What a lot of people miss from that is that it never asked for anyone to leave their home. None was forced to leave their homes for the partition plan. So it was a Jewish state that have 45% Arabs and 55% Jews on a land that was, by the way, in large part already owned by the Jews. The Muslims only owned
Ohad,
8.6%.
hold on. Listen, I understand that this is the history as you see it. Okay, that's
This is the history. If you
Hold
think
on.
that I'm lying, tell me where.
Give me a second. The reason I'm stopping you is because you're presenting a version of history that is vastly different than most scholars document in their scholarly work. You're giving a version of history which is very one-sided towards the presentation of what you consider to be factual. That is not factual. Let me give you a couple examples.
You're the same.
The amount of violence that was perpetrated towards Arabs or Jews as these dynamics shifted was vastly slanted towards more Arab deaths. These violent extremist pro-Zionist gangs of terrorists were doing things to disrupt the British, to try to accelerate the establishment of the state and relinquish of control of Palestine to the Zionists, as well as the violent gangs that were unaliving vast numbers of Arabs in trying to create a territorial expansion for the provisions of the state, were one of the reasons why the Arabs attacked. Because of the immense amount of violence by these rabid Zionist groups. Now, in addition, if you're living in a territory and you have been living there for hundreds of years, and yes, there was a change in oversight because of World War I, there was the mandate by the British over the region of Palestine, but it wasn't British land. They were sort of like the controlling authority, and people lived in the land. They were overseeing it at the end of the war, trying to discern what to do with the land, having been conquered from the Ottomans. Now, with that said, if you're somebody living in a territory, Jew, Arab, Christian, whatever you may have been at the time, you may say that Jews living there were under oppressive conditions. I disagree with that wholeheartedly. I think that's a very poor way to put it. There were a minority. They weren't the majority. There was way more Arabs. There were way more Arabs in historic Palestine in 1900 than there were Jews. Look at the population charts. It's indisputable. There was mass migration, especially from Europe, from the anti-Semitism of being unwelcome in European nations where Jews flocked to Israel to build the population to establish the state. In addition, Jews that were elsewhere in places like Iraq and Syria and Morocco were forced at the end of a gun through terrorist attacks that these same thugs perpetrated to make it appear as if the local Arab population was enforcing pogroms on the Jews, so they would flee to buttress the burgeoning population for the Jewish state to emerge. That's factual. Okay, so when you say all these things, if you're somebody living in an area and you see all these changes taking place and you hear the stirrings of a state to be created, and you're like, what the hell? And yes, some people did buy land. Some people sold some land. These are all facts too. But the bottom line was someone was going to forcibly disrupt the lives of the people in the region you've been living for generations. I'd be opposed to that. If right now where I'm living, I'm looking around, if some group came in and said, hey, you know what? We're going to create X, Y, and Z because we can, and these people have been lobbying for it and they bought a few adjacent properties, you got to go. And I'd be like, F that. If I heard the rumblings of that happening, I'd want to stop it. That's human. The fact that this was forced into place through the UN and the US and the British, and it was conceived and schemed and paid for by a bunch of rich Zionist Ashkenazis, is the driving force behind the problem. And I believe that the motivation for the hatred is not towards Jews. It's not towards people who care about their religion, the Judaism, or want Muslim. They could give a shit about that. They had a historical claim and tie to the land they'd been living on. They didn't say God gave it to them. They're just living there. They had subsequent generations that had been living there, and others came in and forcibly cleansed them and continue to cleanse them off of said land. Read any books by scholars like Norman Finkelstein, Elian Pape. Read the 100-Year War on Palestine, or whatever it is. These are great books that delineate the actual history, not this revisionist history that you're sharing, saying that people left voluntarily, or all the land was bought up, all the Arabs are as violent, all these other bullshit claims. What motivates people is the anger of the dispossession, the mistreatment, somebody looking down on you as less than you, the racism and the abject mistreatment, and the subjugation to oppression, violent oppression, death, murder, further dispossession, and basically the lack of a light at the end of the tunnel for autonomy and peace, because they make peaceful resolution impossible. So it makes violent resistance inevitable. Not because they're violent people, but because the violence stems from the circumstances in which the people find themselves with no other option but to resist.
Can I answer?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So, just to make it clear, when you are trying to paint the picture that we're trying to paint, you're basically saying, for example, if we take the Hebron massacre, as far as I know, there might be a dispute about the number, okay? But the number of Palestinians, let's put them in 19 Palestinians. You put them on the same moral equivalency as the 67 Jews that were unalived. But the 19 Palestinians that have been unalived were unalived because they perpetrated the violence. They hunted Jews in their homes and tried to unalive them. Please? This is the reason why they've been unalived. You can't put them.
Can I speak, Chip, please?
We got to take some time.
He's just repeating himself from earlier.
Okay, I
And I
think
did
that
actually have responses to his much
yeah,
earlier
not
statements.
that's all is going to not that's all is going to go, and then it's going to be below. No, Rez then below. Good.
Thank you. So the two facts that Israel
I
supporters
just
leave
finished
out
my
from
point.
their historical Ohad,
I'm
you
not.
made your point earlier and you repeated it. So we
I'm not.
understand you want to blame Arab
I'm not
people for violence against Jewish people. And I'm going to give you two
against.
historical facts. I'm
Not
going to give you
doing
two
it.
historical facts that Israel supporters always leave out without fail. They always leave these facts out of their narrative because they try to give the order of events and they leave out these two crucial facts that we learn in school. In 1917,
I'm
there
not
was
going to
something
do
called the
8 versus 1.
Ohad. I know listening is not a strong suit
If,
for Israel supporters, but if
if
you
I
could
let
please allow me to give
if I
you
let
these two facts.
if
Two facts. Just two facts, Ohad. I know it's hard. So the 1917 Balfour Declaration gave Jewish people a promise of land and gave Arabs nothing other than a promise to protect their rights. And that's what started the series of riots. It wasn't anything about anti-Sem, conspiracy, racial hatred. It had to do with the fact that their land was at risk. And the Shaw Commission report looked into the causes of that violence in the 1920s and found that those fears were not unfounded. They said due to historical reasons. That's an exact quote. And the other fact that Israel supporters leave out is the 1856 abolishment of dhimmi status and the jizya, those sources of, quote, oppression, which, by the way, dhimmi means protected. And the jizya tax, as I understand it, was lower than the tax that Muslims had to pay. They also didn't have to serve in the army. And dhimmi means protected because the army was what was protecting them. And Jewish people lived in peace with Christian people for 500 plus years. You said they were never peaceful. They were. There was something called the Jewish Golden Age in Spain. And after the expulsion from Spain, those Jewish people took shelter in the Ottoman Empire. And I want to go back to a point David said earlier, where they try to bring in crimes from Yemen and Syria and Iraq. Those places were not under Ottoman rule. Those places were not Palestinian. So Israel supporters are being racist when they try to draw in those outside crimes and they assign them to Palestinians.
Um, it's my turn, right? You finished,
Yep.
brother? Okay. Um, a lot of propaganda I just come, but he's like didn't boring from this story or all your facts you said. You didn't let me said anything, brother Sheb. You say everything. Um, I don't know. There are like blind people or like we just have like this history are like bring from where or from what or according to any standards or like sciencely or something you study. So from 7 months we hear that if I want like somebody just to bring something new and not come like all people see it like a liar and just he like trust himself as he's like speak truth and he's so cold. I like feel they already do the G side G word in Gaza, and after 40,000 human, 70% of them from children and the women's, and they have like all this rude to say that in live about all these people. Sorry to not introduce myself. I am Bilal from Jerusalem. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for listening.
All right, well, thank you. I think Rez Khan is here. Rez, did you want to share anything?
Yes, so basically, I've been watching this. I've been supporting what's been going on and looking at, what's been going on in Palestine since 2014. To be honest, before that, I didn't really know much about much. So I'm UK born and raised, and you know I'm 42, so I've been watching it for a while now and sharing information. Earlier today, well, there was a fire. So the Israeli settlers in the West Bank, they actually set a home alight, and they unalived 2 children, burnt them alive. At the end of the day, whenever you're talking about morals and you're talking about the rest of it, so it's not just the ITF, you're talking about people whose mindset is to finish off a people. Now, to be on the right side of history, to ask a question, is it fair? Is it fair that people, every time something happens, more and more land is being taken away? I believe it was Blinken, I'm not sure about the name of this guy, I think it was Blinken that visited Israel in the end of March. On that date, or the day before, 2,200 acres of the West Bank was given to Israel. Now, how is that fair? How is anyone sitting here and saying to us, 1 second, how are they fighting back or whatever else? Okay, you're talking about the H group. You're saying they are a problem in Gaza, but the H group do not exist in the West Bank, right? So why is this happening in the West Bank? Why are people being pew-pewed? Why are they being, you know, their houses being set alight? Why are people being targeted, snipers? Why is this happening in the West Bank then? Because over the years, if you look at the map, every single time over the years, Israel has taken more and more and more land. This has always been about how much land they can take. And if you talk to the people who are the settlers, there's a woman who's quite well known, and I've forgotten her name now, but she's absolutely vile. She's one of them that leads this whole movement in the West Bank.
Daniela Weiss.
That's the one. That's the disgusting person that I'm talking about. I'm calling her a person is an insult to people. But let's continue. The point is that woman has actually gone on and said, oh yes, not just to take on Gaza, which is Gaza. She talks about also how to take on part of Jordan and what the greater Israel plan is. For people not understanding or sitting on and saying, oh, well, 1 second, how do you know who's wrong? Listen, when it comes to the H group and that side of it, these are people who are oppressed. Resistance, I mean, in the West, you call them a T group. But in the rest of the world, guess what? They call them a resistance. Now, resistance can only happen if there is somebody who is oppressing. You can, and that's how it works. And there's only so much you can kick somebody in the gut, take their land, unalive their family members before people will get up and fight back. Look at what is left of their land. Look at what they only got it in small slithers of land. And even for that, every time they have to go through, how many checkpoints do they have in the West Bank, for example? And have you seen the wall? Tell me any other part of the world that would be okay. They've gone and done this, and it's so. And you know what it is? Honestly, Chip, I have a lot of love and respect for you, right? But when I look at what the West have done, and again, born and raised in the UK, right? And I have a, you know, whatever it is for the government or whatever, but our governments are so poor with what they have done in the other parts of the world. They have encouraged this madness. They've allowed this madness to continue. It's America that has vetoed so many times the ceasefire to stop it from happening. They've turned around and said they don't want it to happen. You know, they don't want it to happen. Why? Because they do not consider, they were the first people to speak up about Ukraine. They were saying, oh yeah, look what's happening. It's unjust, look at these people. And when it comes down to these people, they don't care. Why? What's the difference? What's the difference with the people in Ukraine, although they've got an army and they've got whatever else? What's the difference between them and talk about the Palestinians? How come the UK and the US have so much? Look at the unnecessary power, where they use this unnecessary powers with the police and everything else to suppress the people. Why? Do people not question what the reason is behind this? For the UK, for the Ukrainians, we were going around with their flags and waving flags and letting people into our homes in the UK, giving them, you know, whatever else, giving them all the benefits in the UK. But when it's come to the Palestinians, we're not even allowed to speak about them. If you speak about the Ukrainians, everyone's willing to listen. You speak about Palestinians, they say, listen, we don't want to talk about it. This is something that we think is a delicate situation. How is it delicate? You think that if you unalive children, unalive women, unalive civilians who are innocent civilians, it does not matter. And I'm sick of people saying women and children. Because who is to say, you know, you're trying to say the elderly people or the people who have nothing to do with the war, they're not innocent? Why? Because they might be men? Talk about everybody. We're talking about innocent civilians are being unalived as we speak. They are being boomed as we speak. Why? Because, you know, Israel is in bed with the biggest bully, which is the US, right? And they have backed them all the way. Yes, they're saying, oh, we're not allowing a certain amount of booms to go there now, but it's far too late. And the amount that they're saying we're not going to allow is minute in comparison to how many they have allowed. So I'm sorry, but I'm really, really angry with the fact that people are still questioning which side they should be on. Because if you are still questioning that, then you really need to look in the mirror and say, have you even got a heart? Because to be honest with you, it's disgusting that this has been allowed to go on for so long and people are still questioning it. But that's all I need to say, Chip. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you for your input. Yeah, that's well said. I did a video about this and said if you're somebody who still supports Israel after you have a country that's indiscriminately bombed and shot at and run over with tanks and put in mass graves and all this crazy stuff. And yeah, I know that what happened on 10/7 was bad. It doesn't mean that one has the right to go back and unalive 35, 40,000 people, many of which were done in ways that are far worse than what you're claiming was so horrendous by the H group. It's just it's not okay. You can't punish the entire society for the acts of a very small fraction of the militants, many of whom may not even support them, and yet you're dropping bombs on residential neighborhoods and taking down 12-story buildings, and little kids being buried in the rubble, whole families collapsed under levels of buildings. It's obscene. It's beneath your dignity to behave this way. It's actually making your country look bad, become ostracized, and become basically like a rogue nation, a country that's not going to be treated the same way ever again, and eventually, through political pressure and most likely economic starvation, is going to shift how the country is managed or even what formation it has. It's unfortunate, but it's like the arrogance and the desire for revenge and this turn Gaza into a parking lot mentality, and also the supremacy of Zionism, all those things added together, everyone's reeling with disgust. And like you said, how can the Americans and the Brits support a country with bombs and money and political cover at the UN and military backing so that no one else will intervene while this crazy slaughter takes place? It tells you where the people will say they have values, but what they do is what matters. And let's face it, U.S. government leadership, not the people, but the government leadership and the people that support the government, the pro-Israeli people that are like, do more, yeah, go get them. You're on the wrong side of history. This is not okay. Yes,
Sorry,
you
Chip.
can. Go ahead.
Can I just add one more thing, please? Just one last thing. You know, the Israel, they are apparently a modern people. So they're basically saying that, you know, the Arabs around the nation, around them, they're quite backward. They think that they're quite advanced. So they pride themselves on having this Western, shall I say, Western mentality. Well, it's only them that from any country in the West that I know of, unless, you know, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that put children in prisons, put them into solitary confinement, take them away. They have little children, they're terrorizing them. Other than, if it was any other country, that would not be allowed. Why are these guys backed up even with that? How is that allowed to put children into prison, to harass children, to grab children, to terrorize? How is that allowed? Because what they're doing is damaging them. They are mentally damaging these children so they cannot function. They are so scared. So what future do these children have? You know, when people sit there and say, well, why didn't they do more with their country? You have oppressed the people, made them live in fear, and still they've done well for what you left them with. So how are people even questioning that? It makes me feel sick. But anyway, thanks.
Yeah, it's hard to watch. Let's give MMB a chance to come in. Welcome, MMB.
Hello, Chip.
Hi.
Hi. I was listening to is it Ohad? Is that how you say his
Ohad.
name?
Ohad. Yeah.
Okay. I've been a little vocal in the comments. Riz, thank you for speaking up. You're an amazing. All of you are amazing, really. One thing I'm so tired of hearing from. I'm so tired from hearing from the Zionists about what their culpability. The thing is, I'm not going to stay long because my godmother, she was Palestinian, okay? Christian Palestinian, driven out in 1967. Her family was killed. They lived in Jerusalem. And I'm sorry, October 7th, how many October 7ths have the Palestinians already have? They've already had so many. And I'm so tired of, okay, so they had, age group may have had something to do on October 7th. How many times has Israel already been caught in lies? How many, they're already saying, they're posted on X about um, the Holocaust, Holocaust remembrance. How many times have they had a chance to get some hostages back? How many times have they ignored the hostages? They've already killed some of their own unalived some of their own hostages. And I'm half German. I was born there. And I'm sorry. I'm ashamed of the Germans right now, and I'm ashamed of, and I'm glad that I'm Irish. I am, because I'm just disgusted and so tired of people just looking at another group of people and saying they're subhuman.
Yeah, it's really bad. Yeah, it's frustrating. I think we were talking earlier before a lot of people poured in about the political dynamics that are stopping this issue, but other issues as well from changing. And it's all part of the same puzzle. And it's very frustrating for the average human being, whether you're anywhere in the UK and in the Western world for that matter. All of these situations are blocked by the same group of commonly interested, very small sliver of society that, are permitting these crazy things to happen. It's almost as if the will of most people is being completely ignored for the benefit of a small fraction, and that obviously never works out well in the long term. We talked about at length how to change it, but it's not going to be easy, and it's not not a simple task to accomplish. TLX wanted to jump in. Thanks, appreciate that. TLX,
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Chip. What I wanted to say is that actions speak a lot louder than words, and the actions that went down during the 40s in Europe and in Japan, we devised laws to prevent them from happening again. Therefore, in a hostage situation, you go to diplomatic solutions. Any kind of negotiations, you go for that first, et cetera, and so on. However, jumping the gun using lame lies that are easily debunkable so you can move forward with atrocities just like they went down back then is totally unacceptable. And responding to T by making a concentration camp, which I heard they're building right now in Gaza, is completely atrocious. Like this is just happening in front of our eyes, and it's repeating itself, and nobody's doing anything about it, just because the top 1% are the ones that are benefiting from. I'm sorry, guys, I get emotional. So it's pretty ugly that they're allowing the famine and the same kind of footage that went out of Germany in the 40s to be coming out right now in Gaza. And these kind of results only tell you that certain people from back then that were in power are still in power, and they're still calling the shots, which is very unfortunate.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I mean, yeah, it's a tough thing. It's a tough nut to swallow when you live in a society or a world where you feel like you have no power, like it's kind of hopeless, like you're stuck and there's very little that we can do. It's there are things we can do. It's just going to take organizing to get it done, which is a lot of work. And I just don't think things are bad enough yet for people to want to put in that work and take the sacrifices and the risks to make these changes. It happened in our country, going back, to 1775. This is what was done here to overcome the British occupation. This is a much bigger, much more globally interconnected power structure that's going to be very difficult to overcome. And I don't know. Even intellectuals like Chris Hedges, somebody who I admire, says there's a strong chance that this stuff is not going to change. It's going to get worse for people like you and I, and for people who live in Palestine. That's the cold, hard truth. Not to be negative, and I don't want to discourage hope or effort, but those power
Right,
structures.
if I can answer that.
Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
Because I think what we're dealing with is one of the darker impulses in human history, and it's very strong. It's called tribalism. And you actually have resurgent nationalist movements around the world where people are making an intellectual defense of tribalism instead of using reason, logic, evidence, and higher ideals to overcome that aspect of human nature. So we are in a second dark ages in that sense, because we have a portion of humanity that wants to drag us backward into the past. And Israel sits very comfortably along with those other supremacists and fascists and people who were an intellectual countercurrent and trying to hold up the past as something we should emulate. You heard Netanyahu do it himself with the language about World War II, right? It's not just my opinion; it's what they're actually doing, right? And there's the rest of us are trying to move humanity forward. Jewish people, by the way, before the state of Israel, were usually on the front lines with us, advocating for progress. And I am grateful to the Jewish voices that are still around today, criticizing the state of Israel and understanding that it's antithetical to Jewish history rather than essential to its protection, right? Because most of the anti-Semitism we see today is, I would argue, is not racially motivated. It has to do with the actions of the state of Israel toward the Palestinian people. So in that way, Israel supporters, by listening to us and acting on our recommendations, can actually ensure the long-term security of their own state, right? Because I believe we're coming from a rational humanist point of view, and any nation is more sustainable when it rules with a lighter hand. That was what I learned in world history in grade school, college, high school, when we studied the Muslim empire, because unlike other empires, they didn't unalive their enemies, they taxed them. So this tax that you complain about, the jizya, that you say is so oppressive, that was actually progressive for its time, and it's part of why the Ottoman Empire lasted for so long. Israel endangers its own security by ignoring that fundamental lesson of history.
That is very well stated. I think it's almost like they're kind of, by virtue of taking the hardline approach and trying to punish and brutalize their perceived adversary, they're making peace impossible, because the least safe place to be, which is supposed to be the purpose of the Jewish homeland, is in Israel. If you're Jewish, like, people are leaving because they know that this is escalating potentially, and you got Hezbollah pointing at you, you got Yemen, you got Iran, you got the people that are resisting inside of Gaza and the West Bank. I mean, peace has to be given a chance. If you don't give somebody autonomy and self-determination to some extent, with whatever security blankets need to be put in place, this is going to continue indefinitely. You either have to get rid of everybody, unalive them. It's never going to be peaceful as long as you continue to choose this framework. And to blame the other side for resisting the situation that you've put in place where there's no possible political outcome, you claim you're giving all these great solutions, which are usually garbage and don't have autonomy. That's the whole point of this, is autonomy. And you claim, well, for our security, we can't go that far. We can't. Hey, tough shit. You have to give somebody a chance to be peaceful. You can't say we left Gaza and all we got was rockets. You still had a full-scale occupation in the West Bank, right? You can't have 4 knives in somebody, pull one out, and then say, aren't we great people? How dare they fight me back? You got to take them all out. You got to get the flip out of there.
Yeah. And self-determination is an American value. It was from Woodrow Wilson. He was the first U.S. president to cross the Atlantic. It was his 14 points at the Treaty of Versailles that ended World War I that are the basis of the modern international order. When we talk about international law, we are talking about 4 conventions on the treatment of civilians going back centuries, even older than the United Nations itself. And Israel wants to stand athwart, they want to oppose that entire progression of human civilization, because it's in their dark mind, in their hateful minds, they think that these people only understand violence. They don't understand that the Code of Hammurabi, the basis of modern civilization, comes from the East. It was the Iranians, the Persians, who gave us that, and there are 50,000 Persian Jews still living in Iran today. Israel's rhetoric tends to erase these Jewish people because they want to portray a false narrative of these people being inherently violent, vicious, etc. It's the same supremacy we saw in other backward political movements in history.
Yeah, great point. Someone asked a question. Someone named Irene said, why are you only talking about Israel? Irene, you obviously tuned in late. When this started today, a couple hours ago, we talked exclusively about the U.S. and its political structure and what potentially needs to happen for things to change, given the dynamics that are in place with money and the permanent security state, the oligarchy, et cetera, et cetera. So if this is being recorded, and it'll be posted on my YouTube and my Rumble channels, so you will see that I'm not solely focused on Israel. I talk about a lot of political stuff. This is a very hot topic right now because of all the unaliving that's taking place. I mean, internationally, it's got huge coverage. We have college kids on campus protesting. It's in our face 24/7, 365. It's a current event. That's why we're talking about it, of course. Okay. By the way, we have, I think, is anybody new here? I think okay. Elisa's here. We're going to let her talk, and then I have to close out. I got to go to the bathroom, and I've been on for too long. Okay. So let's finish with Elisa. Go ahead, Elisa. Oops, sorry about that. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
It's okay. Thank you. Thank you for bringing me on. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the points that that the gentleman that tall. I can't read his
Ohad?
first.
Ohad?
Yeah, Olan, yeah. And then what the other lady was saying, MM Bele, she was talking about the Holocaust. So one thing that I realized this week was, and by the way, to everybody who doesn't know me, like I'm Jewish by descent, and I wanted to convert at one point. But one thing that I realized was about this whole Holocaust thing, why they talk about the Holocaust so much, is because the Holocaust plays an important role in the indoctrination to Zionism. Because if you look at the history of Zionism, it's very interesting. What's interesting about Zionism is that it was nationalistic before it even had a country. It's you talk about tribalism, but what it really is, I think, is nationalism. And nationalism started growing a lot around at the end of the 1800s and the First World War. And the Holocaust plays a really important role in brainwashing people into believing that Jewish people need to have a state for themselves. And when I was in Israel with the Jewish Federation of LA, they did a lot of things that, indoctrinated me. But one of the things that was major was they took us to the Holocaust Remembrance Museum in Israel. And I cried like a baby, Chip. Like I was going through it and I saw all the shoes and all the pictures and all the stories, and I was crying because it really touched my heart. Because any human being who has just like a little bit of empathy, of course, will get triggered or feel something when you spend 2-3 hours in a museum of death. All it talks about is death. And that's why they keep talking about the Holocaust. Now, they're still trying to play that card and use it as a way to create fear in Jewish people. Because Zionism started in the late 1800s, but it actually really took force after the First World War, and when Schmittler started gaining some power, because Jewish people in Germany started getting really scared of what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And the Zionists, they saw that fear works, and they ran with it. And they said, "Oh, look what's happening in Germany. That's why we need Israel." And then the Holocaust happened. And then they started saying, "Oh, see, we were right. The Holocaust happened. This is why we need Israel." And now that they have Israel, they still are talking about the Holocaust.
Yeah, there's a book by Norman Finkelstein called The Holocaust Industry, and it's all about playing the Holocaust card and how it leans on people, gets donations. The Germans have been paying reparations for decades, a lot of money. It's used as a tool of guilt to people outside the Jewish community, and it's one of fear-mongering within the Jewish community, the never again idea. Unfortunately, that didn't translate into any other group. So never again included Jewish people, but not anybody else. So that's why they feel justified in mass murdering and collectively punishing another group of people who had nothing to do with the atrocities that affected their country. Unfortunately happened on 10/7. And so
And there were so many
it's
other
very, very
Holocausts.
hypocritical.
Very hypocritical. And there were also so many other Holocausts in this world, like the Native Americans, or I don't know, the countless ones that happened in the Middle East, in Asia, in Europe. And like, why are we always talking about Holocaust? And guys, I'm Jewish. Like I'm a Jewish descent. I wanted to even make Aliyah at one point to Israel, but after learning about all these things during the last 7 months, it's like, why are we only talking about the Holocaust? What about all the other people that died due to white supremacy and all this? Why is it only that we're only... I understand that it's like the most modern and it was very violent. Like there were 6 million Jewish people that died. Half of Russia's population died during the war. Is like 50% of Russia's population during that time. So it was a massive blow to the whole world. But when you think about human beings in general, it's like there have been other Holocausts as well that we don't talk about.
Good point. All right, we're going to close on that. That's a very good set of points there. Thank you, everybody, so much for who contributed. This is a great live. We covered a lot of stuff. It was fun. I have to cut it off now because I have some other stuff to prepare for the market opening at 6 p.m. I do some trading, and I got to go to the bathroom. So thank you, everybody. Thanks for moderating, Federico. And
Thank you, Chip. Thank you.
Even Ohad, if you're still listening, thank you for sending the stuff you sent. I will address it once I research it. Thanks, everybody. I will see you soon. Have a good night.
Good night, man.